Welcome to CirclemakersTV. I'm your host, Matthew Williams, and we're broadcasting from my house in Devizes, and the date is the 31st of July, 2011. So hope you're seeing us and hearing us. If you are, let us know in the channel. First, we'll do the formalities, which are, if you want to contact us tonight on the show, you can add us on your Skype as CirclemakersTV. That's one word, CirclemakersTV. Add us on Skype. It allows you to Skype into the show if you wish to ask the guest a question. And we'll need to authorize you, but let us know in channel if we haven't done that. Now, let's talk about the channel. Well, down in your lower right-hand corner of the screen, if you scroll down past the video window a little bit, there's a little white box, and you can tap in there, and you can hear other people chatting, or you can see other people chatting, and you can make contact with them, and you can respond to things. If you want to ask the guest or myself a question, if you can put that for myself or the guest in capital letters, then we can pick those out from just the general chit-chat that's going on in that channel area. So capital letters, and it will get us closer to your question quicker. If we haven't answered it within a certain time, please feel free to re-ask it. And if you want to go to our website, it's www.circlemakerstv.org. And there you can get a link to many of the other resources, such as the back editions of the show, and also some photos and some resources that they won't let us put on YouTube. So go on there, and you'll find out a lot more about the show. So, without further ado, let's go across to the chair, and let's find out who we've got in the chair. So, guest on the chair, hello.
Hey there.
It's Dr. Simeon Hein. And Dr. Hine is here from the United States on a little tour that he's doing some research. So would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the UK at the moment?
Well, thanks a lot, Matt, for having me here tonight. And
sure.
This is such a fascinating subject. We like to bring people over here from different countries so they can really experience, the magic of this area, the sacred sites, the crop circles. We take them on some night watches, and our idea for them is to be able to, go out and experience some of the magic for themselves and just see a little bit different reality than they might be used to in their daily lives. And often we do see some very strange and interesting effects on cameras and batteries in crop circles and so forth.
Right.
And we'll take a look at some of those a little bit later.
Okay, great. Yes, we've got some footage we can show, which has been filmed this year, I believe. And we've also got some photos, which you do presentations, right. And you're going to give us some insight into your research work. Now then, I kind of met you through the CSETI group. I think you were doing some sky watching in the area, but I found out then that you were involved in things like remote viewing and this sort of stuff. So do you want to sort of tell us how you kind of got involved in all of this paranormal weirdness and, maybe not paranormal is maybe the wrong word. How would you describe your initial involvement in all of this stuff going back a long time ago?
Well, it's somewhere between an accident and a catastrophe and a bit of chaos, which is really what makes life what it is. My background is originally as a sociologist. I studied fractal geometry and chaos theory as ways of measuring, information in social systems. Sociologists, study society. I was always interested in technology, the interface between machines and people and nature and so forth. So when I finished my dissertation, I came across this concept of remote viewing. I heard someone talking about it, and honestly, I was pretty skeptical.
Right.
I just didn't think that the average person had any sort of natural psychic ability. I heard this person named Dr. Courtney Brown, still a professor at Emory University. He had taken some remote viewing instruction. For the people who don't know what that is, it's this ability to perceive people, places, objects that are not present to your physical senses and get information about it. The U.S. government, other governments have had programs about this in the past to develop, psychic spies and so forth. And this whole program was declassified in 1995. And some of those people in the military program began teaching it. And Courtney Brown was one of them. And he was now teaching classes in Atlanta. He came to Boulder, Colorado, where I was at the time. And he gave this interview, and I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. I mean, he basically said that anybody had this ability, they could be trained to do it and so forth. And I was a bit skeptical of that. I thought the only way for me to find out if this is really true or not is to go take the course, right? What better way?
Yeah.
And see for yourself, spend a little over a week at his institute.
Yeah.
And I did. And so what I found within a few days is that everybody in the class was getting much better results than you would expect by chance.
Right.
We could take a hidden target and someone could get a lot more information than if they were just guessing, describing colors and sizes and shapes and so forth. And even myself, within 2 or 3 days, I was getting really, very good drawings of these hidden pictures. And I got to tell you, I wasn't totally comfortable with this. I mean, my rational mind couldn't quite understand it. And towards the end of the week, we were given a target, which was a crop circle. It was actually the Windmill Hill Formation.
Right.
From 96.
1996, right, okay.
Now, at the time, and I've got this on the screen if you want to show it. But
oh, yeah, sure. Have you got it up on now?
Yeah, so
I see.
So I didn't know what a crop circle was at the time. I'd never heard that term. You have to understand, I was coming out of academics. People didn't talk about such things in academics, all these remote viewing and crop circles and things like UFOs. I mean, I never heard about the word remote viewing in graduate school. I never heard anything about crop circles or anything. So I'm coming across this, and I'm thinking, what in the world is this? And we were told by Courtney and others that we didn't know who made them. They just spontaneously appeared overnight in the fields in England. And this was actually my drawing of this target. This is a blind drawing of the Windmill Hill Formation. And I know it's a little faint, but at the time, I never knew I would show this to anybody again, because at the time, you don't even know what you're viewing. But you can see quite clearly down towards the bottom, there's a circle, and there are arrows going in and out from the circle, which is my way of expressing some sort of energy transfer going in and out of that circle. And you can see these beans around here, which, I didn't know what these were, but they look like people, basically, walking around the circle, and something like hills in the background. And then when I did what we call the Phase 4, which is a stage in the military viewing system, originally designed by Ingo Swann and other people like that, by Stanford Research Institute. There's this phase where you get more detail. It happens usually 15, 20 minutes, half an hour into a session after you've got the preliminary ideas down. Anyway, you can see the beans are attempting to communicate some archetypal information, holographics, and some sense of a master DNA molecule. And things like that. Now, I was really curious, what is all this? Shortly after that, I began to go to different types of conferences. I went to a few UFO conferences, since we were also given UFO-type targets.
Yes.
And that's where I met Ron Russell a few months later. And he was giving a talk about crop circles. So I thought, wow, I'll find out, in an hour, exactly who makes them, how they're made, what they mean, so forth. And Ron just deepened the mystery, really. I mean, he basically told us we didn't know how they were made, what they meant, what the purpose was, and that he gave these tours over here in England, in the summertime to see them, and you could go and see them for yourself. So I thought, what better way to get feedback on this session? In a remote viewing session, you always want to get feedback because you want to make sure that the information that you're picking up psychically or with your own resonance. I like to think of it more as a kind of a resonant type of process, like you're the radio receiver. Whatever type of process it is, you want to calibrate it with the actual target then. So I thought, what better way to calibrate, trying to get a sense of the feedback, than to go with Ron and see these for myself and get a sense, were my sessions accurate or not? And that's really how I got involved with the whole thing. It was back in 1997.
Excellent. Well, I remember meeting you on the hillsides, and
Right.
you know, you had a laser with you at the time, and I think we had a bit of an experience, which I've talked about on this show, whereby you shone your laser at a cloud when there was a Japanese TV crew were trying to sort of do a recreation of us having a UFO sighting, and they sort of said, yeah, do the recreation and say that you saw the thing over there, and we'll kind of go back through this. We were doing this setup recreation, and the Japanese guys were kind of looking at us while setting up the camera. Simeon popped along, and we said, oh, show us your laser. We understand you've got this good laser. Show us the laser. And Simeon dutifully pointed it at a cloud. Can you remember what happened then? I mean, rather than me sort of, try and coax you to sort of say what I would like you to say, would you be able to sort of carry on from there, and we'll see whether it matches up for the viewers with what I've told so far? Yeah,
we did see what appeared to be like a light moving quickly through the cloud in that same area.
Right.
It could have been spherical.
Yeah.
I think you were actually looking at that direction more than me, but there was something that appeared to move through the cloud at that point.
Okay. I think what I've told people on the show is that 3 balls of light seemed to come out of the cloud, and the cloud seemed to sort of go boom, as it were. When you shone your laser at it, it's like there was a flash inside the cloud, and then 3 balls of light came out. One zigzagged, one went in a straight line, and one, there was different motion to all 3 of them. And do you remember the Japanese producer, a guy getting very excited because he'd seen this?
Yeah.
And then he asked his camera guys, "Did you film it?"
Right, I remember that.
And then he sort of went, no, because in Japanese he was like going, no, and it's like he said, no, they thought we were doing the reconstruction. We thought we were getting into the excitement of the reconstruction, so they were filming our faces, not what was actually going on.
That's right. Here's the thing. At the time, I didn't know you.
Yes.
And I didn't know what you were doing on that hill. I think I just stumbled upon that area by accident, just walking around that whole area.
Right.
And
did you remember anything just after that? The same incident basically, but do you remember anything that happened just after the sighting of these 3 balls of light? Do you remember anything then? I'm trying to jog your memory.
I believe there were some aircraft or a helicopter or something like that.
Yes,
that came
indeed.
off in that direction of the sky, something like that.
Yeah. Well, we were standing where the valley dips away sharply from Adam's Grave back up to Knapp Hill, and we were standing on the edge of that point, looking out at the vantage across from there towards Woodborough Hill. So we were facing towards the south. And when all this happened, I seem to remember there was a noise like no, 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 no. And then a helicopter came up from the side of the hill where we were, and we all thought, well, how long has he been there? And why was he silent? Why didn't we hear him? Because he must have been so close. But it seemed like the noise came out of nowhere, and suddenly you had this helicopter there after these 3 balls of light that came out of the cloud after Simeon had shone his laser. So I think that was
something like that. Yeah.
Either something weird that the military were up to, or CSETI in action and working very nicely. Thank you very much.
Right.
I believe the Japanese producer brought his family over from Japan because he was so excited at what he'd seen in the area, and that really told him that this was the real deal. So he wanted to bring his family to the area to see if they could see something. So kind of an interesting tale, but you remember some of it. It's interesting to see, what you remember, but yeah. Okay, well, cool. So you were there on that one, and we've got some other stories we can talk about in a bit, but we should maybe sort of say, what are your sort of opinions then? What were your opinions on crop circles to start with? How did you think they were created, and what was your remote viewing telling you? Because that's the obvious thing to sort of say, isn't it? You've got the beings there in the field, in your remote viewing. How did you interpret that initially?
That's a good question. Initially, when I saw those beings there, based on the type of energy and feeling I was getting from the session, I assumed they were non-human. It was an assumption at the time, because you have to understand, when you're doing the session, we didn't have a particular time reference. It was just the circle in general. So that could have been people looking at it later on, humans walking around the formation, croppies and crop tourists and so forth. it could have been beings who were there, as it was forming. Now, keep in mind, at the time when we were given the feedback on these crop circles, we were told that humans weren't making them, right? That this was not being made by humans. So then, if those beings were not humans, that only left, they had to be humanoid or something like that.
Yeah.
So at the time, based on the energy, it did feel, it was really hard to tell if they were humans, if these were the ones who were making it. And keep in mind, this type of session was done in a group, so there wasn't lots of opportunity. If we were working one-on-one, let's say you were the monitor and I was the viewer, we could kind of work a little bit to identify, are these beings making it? Are they showing up later on? We could use timelines and so forth. There are techniques for doing that. But at the time, this is a group session. No one's actually monitoring my particular session, so it just went through and we finished it. And so we didn't do those types of exercises that we could do now to figure it out. But at the time, based on what I was told initially at the conferences that I went to in the States and then coming over here, was that there simply wasn't enough darkness in the British summer, from 11 to 4:30 or so, 11 to 4, 5 hours of darkness to make something that complicated.
Right, I see.
I ended up going to the Glastonbury Crop Circle Symposium, I guess as it was called. And, there was a speaker after speaker that would say all the reasons why humans were not capable of doing this. And since that was what I was initially told, I thought, well, those must be extraterrestrials making it. And you're familiar with all this type of evidence. I'm sure our listeners are too. That architectural firms said it would take them 4 or 5 days in the daytime, just to place the points without even pushing the wheat down. There was the issue of the bloom being on there, that kind of fungus.
Yes.
That kind of powdery fungus that often would be undisturbed, when you went in the early hours of the morning. And the fact that no one had ever been caught in all these years, there were no footprints, just on and on and on, right?
Yes.
And this is what I believed until I met you, basically, which was that, humans couldn't do this. And one speaker after another at these conferences would repeat this. And I mean, it was potentially plausible given that there was not much evidence of seeing people in and around these, in the middle of the night or shortly thereafter. And that, something mysterious was making these. We were offered theories such as ionic plasmas, coming down, electrical discharges from the upper atmosphere. Obviously, perhaps extraterrestrial craft were making them with their laser beams. Even some people suggested that these were being made by the military from satellites, from above, because of the precision.
Yeah.
These are, because we know the military are especially good artists and so forth. So there were a lot of theories. And I actually, if you listen to some of the talks I gave before we met, we met, I believe it was the Wagon and Horses in 2000.
Right.
I would get up on stage and repeat some of these same ideas, even show this session saying, look, there's the extraterrestrials making the formations and so forth. And it's been quite a ride since then, I'll tell you that, quite a ride.
Sure, yeah. The sort of stuff you were doing back then, were you initially kind of offended by the idea of people being involved, or
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, before I even knew your name particularly, I know we met on that hilltop that time, but I didn't remember your name, or maybe just, I had just met you then. But people I know refer to you as a trickster.
Yes.
And it was a kind of a derogatory type of, labeling, like, there's that Matt Williams, don't believe what he says. He's trying to change your mind. And at the conferences, there was kind of a derogatory sense of anything that people would have to do with crop formations, crop circles, and so forth. And so we just didn't really entertain the idea.
Sure.
And let me tell you, there's another range of things which was really interesting, which we really need to keep in mind here, that people were having interesting and strange experiences, in and around the crop formations.
Yes.
People seeing balls of light, strange light effects and so forth. Obviously UFO sightings, the reports of camera and battery failure and so forth. So it wasn't just the stories that we were hearing at conferences and books you could read and so forth. It was also just going around Wiltshire, going from, in my first year there in 1997, talking to people I would meet in the formation saying no. And you would see, people would tell you experiences they had had or their friends had had. And so it did suggest that there was some sort of energy in and around the crop circles that's different than, a typical normal wheat field. And so that's another range of evidence that, kind of pulled me into the whole phenomena. I should say the first one I ever saw was that Coke Snowflake by Silbury Hill, which was one of the types of, 1997, which is one of the types of formations, mathematically, that I studied in my dissertation, fractal geometry. So that
Right.
here was the size of a football field. Before I'd seen it, in a book, a few inches across, and here it was just huge. And I thought, well, if people didn't make this, there's some other intelligence in the universe that is actually intelligent enough to understand fractals. Then the one appeared by Milk Hill, which was a relative of that. So those types of patterns kind of drew me into the whole thing because I was kind of, I'd studied those and was familiar with the mathematics behind those particular shapes.
Right. Well, yes, I see somebody's in channel is saying the trickster. Well,
Yes, there he is.
Yeah,
It's you.
the trickster indeed. Yeah. Well, have we got any questions in channel? I think somebody was making some points. We've got a few more people in now. We've got about 8 users there. Probably some more watching that aren't actually chatting in the channel as well. That usually happens. So we could have a few more. We may have about 20 viewers perhaps. Somebody might know the answer to that one. You can tell us. Somebody said back a while, this is Sonia, she was saying, was this in 1996? But I think because I missed the question, would you like to specify what was in 1996? And we'll ask that one. Jimone says, he doesn't think that the trickster is a bad thing, though. And GBC has just said, what is Simeon's stance on crop circles now? Which is, I suppose, the next
Well, we will get to that.
question,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, why don't you just go to this for a second? This is a slide, this is a shot of our static meter.
Okay, let's have a little look at this.
And
then.
this is what Ron and I brought over based on the work before of the BLT team. John Burke brought one of these over. We found the same manufacturer. We brought it over ourselves. And, I asked him at one of these conferences, how many circles did you actually sample to come to the conclusion that there was more static charge in the natural formations versus the man-made? Keep in mind, we thought we had these litmus tests for the difference between the man-made ones and the real ones, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that whole line of thinking. So we thought, wait. So I asked John, he said, well, 5 or 6 circles. Now, not to, denigrate that at all. It's initial, that's exploratory research, but 5 or 6 circles is not enough to get any sort of confidence in, statistical confidence. You need a sample. I used to teach statistics, okay? You need at least a sample size of 30 to be confident of any sort of correlation at all, just at the minimum level.
Right, okay.
You'd like to have a sample size of 100, right? Because the more times you see something repeated, the more confidence you have that there's a relationship going on there between one thing and the other.
Sure.
So Ron and I thought, why don't we bring this static meter over and measure lots of circles, right? And so we measured wind damage, we measured tram lines, and these big, artistic, monstrous-sized formations, when we would go in them, it would make the static meter move. It would jump around. But when we were over just a flat field or wind damage or a tram line, it didn't change very much. And so that caused us to think perhaps we might have a litmus test for the difference between the real ones and the man-made ones, right? This is what everybody always wanted to have. Can you tell the difference, right?
Yes,
and
repeatable
so
experiments.
We thought we had one of those. And then we encountered you at the Wagon and Horses in 2000. And you said, hey, we're doing an advertisement. The farmer's been paid for the field. Would you like to come and do a true experiment where you can measure the field before we make it and then as we make it and afterwards? And we thought, wow, this is great. We'll finally show that these man-made ones don't have any effect on the meter, right? That they're, what we'd say, statically flat, just no juju out there, no energy. And so we followed you to Pattern, right?
Yes.
And there were a few other people there at the time. The farmer, your team, myself, Ron, and some others. And we watched you, from beginning to end, and lo and behold, that made the static meter move quite a bit.
Sure.
Quite a bit, as much as anything else we had seen. And that was the end of our idea of this static meter being some sort of litmus test for authenticity. Based on what we were thinking at the time, we thought we could tell the difference. So here's what we found is that, well, if the one that Matt and his team just legally made, is making the meter move around, then what about all the other ones that made the meter move around? Those could have been man-made also. And that was the beginning of our realization that the whole premises that we're working from were wrong. That the man-made ones also could generate some sort of change in the energy field. It wasn't like what you did showed that it was a hoax. It was really, for us, the opposite. What it showed is that a man-made formation could create an energetic change in the distribution of energy in the air. And that was interesting. I thought that was really interesting. It didn't fit with what we thought, but if you're an open-minded person, you have to let go of your idea sometimes and say, hey, the data didn't fit what I thought. Isn't that wonderful? That means it's actually something bigger and better than I thought, which is what you want. You want to be disproved. You want your own ideas to get disproved so you can reach something bigger. Otherwise, you're not growing. Science doesn't advance. Nothing advances if it's always like you thought it was, right?
Sure.
So that was my reaction to it. But it did lead to the beginning of our seeing things different from the other circle researchers and people that had wanted to say the man-made ones were just fake, nothing going on there, stick with the real big ones, the real ones. So,
absolutely,
interesting,
yes.
Huh?
And it should be pointed out perhaps that I think you tested the field before you went in.
We did.
So you'd done a control, and
Exactly.
your readings on the meter were sort of null. They were kind of like you'd expect to find in any old field. And then after we made the circle, then there was quite high readings, I believe. You said it was
a few 100-volt change.
It was a lot more than you'd been having at the time. I believe you say you've had more now. You've registered more.
We've had some. I think the one. I believe it was one of them at Roundway several years ago made it move quite a bit, several thousand volts. But that's underneath the power lines, keep in mind. So that could have something to do with it. We've seen it also go that high before thunderstorms in the U.S., so forth. But at the time, that was one of the biggest, and that meant that we didn't have a litmus test after all. We were seeing an energetic change, but it was happening in a man-made formation. Well,
even perhaps I suppose one could wonder whether or not, why is there a change there at all? If it's in man-made circles, why is there a change? Is there any mileage in that one? Is it something that you would only expect to find in a human-made circle with a team that are kind of experienced? Or if you guys went out and made one, were you finding, if you went out and did a legal experiment, were you finding changes in the ones you did yourself?
Yes. That's a really good question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. After seeing you do that one, we began to pay farmers to use their fields. We'd come over here, pay them, and do experiments, which we would totally, tell people about after they'd been made. Of course, we didn't always do it beforehand. We don't want people interfering with our experiments. But we'd paid the farmer. We did experiments at Hill Martin, Cherrill, even Woodborough Hill in 2006, which we can talk about for a mathematical educator, Scott Flansburgh, who's also a world championship poker player. He teaches kids how to add math in their minds without calculators.
Right.
So he commissioned us to do one. And we did some in the U.S., and we began to find, just like at the R formation, they made the meter move around, and they also created strange effects on cameras and batteries, even the ones we made, even some pretty small ones.
Right.
And so that even led us to go farther, thinking, it's not just a static change. There's something really weird going on here. When we go into these formations, our camera batteries are dying. The camera's not focusing well. We had a case, we'll show people in a moment, a video of someone who came over with us on the tour. His electronic compass all of a sudden is not pointing 180 degrees. Between north and south, it's now 90 degrees. You can see the hands kind of going up to 90 degrees for north and south being apart. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Lots of strange effects. Now, here's the thing. We've been seeing this for years in formations, and we thought that's because this is the real ET juju. I mean, the extraterrestrials, of course. The extraterrestrials came here overnight, and it's their weird energy from their spaceships and their laser beams and whatever else those ETs have that's creating these effects, right? But now we're seeing them in our own formations, which led us to believe, well, if our formations are man-made, I mean, we know they're man-made because we're here making them, and it's affecting our cameras and our batteries and so forth.
Yeah.
Then that must mean the other ones that we've been seeing are man-made too. infecting our cameras and batteries the same way, which led us to the conclusion that the man-made ones are real. That's if it destroys your camera and your batteries. We've had people who've permanently lost their cameras. I can show you pictures. Even happened to Colin a couple of years ago at Martinsville.
Yeah, Colin Andrews.
Yes, Colin Andrews.
Ah.
Then it's real. I mean, things that aren't real don't affect your cameras and your batteries. So it's shifted our point of view, at least for myself, is that the man-made ones are actually possibly more energetic than what we call the original phenomena because they're larger, they're more geometrically precise. There's simply much more going on there than the original phenomena, which appear usually as a simple circle, a group of simple circles, and so forth. Now, I believe those type exist also. I've talked to witnesses in the U.S. Let me show you a picture of one of those. I don't have a picture of the circle, but this happened, just for reference, in the town of Usk, Washington. I spoke to a witness named Louise in the Coeur d'Alene area, and she told me that in the 1970s, she went out to pick huckleberries with her friends.
Right.
They went to this little area near Usk, Washington. You can see the huckleberry areas would be across on the other side of this river here.
Right.
And they're out there picking huckleberries. It's near the Colville National Forest. She said a metallic disc came over their heads about 30 feet across and kind of made a sound and landed on the other side of the trees. And there were a couple people up there picking huckleberries because it was especially, good spot for huckleberry picking. One of these people kind of panicked and started running down the road back to Usk, where they contacted the police. In the meantime, Louise and her friends went over to see where this thing had landed. She told me at the time they didn't even have the word UFO in their vocabulary. This is the 1970s. Not everyone, was familiar with Project Blue Book and the idea of flying saucers and so forth. What she described was there was a circle in the meadow with a radial lay. She specifically told me it had a radial lay, splayed outward from the center. The meadow had been pushed down. The craft was no longer there, but she could see where it had landed. Shortly thereafter, the military come up the road and tell everyone to leave the area and close the road off. And the last thing she sees is them taking out equipment, doing soil samples, all this sort of thing. A couple days later, they go back to see if they can get into the huckleberry area, because if you don't pick those huckleberries, while they're ripe, the bears are going to eat them and they're not going to be as good later on. They kind of have a certain freshness time period, like a sell-by date when you're picking them. Yeah. Because I've done it myself out in that area. So She says the military's still out there. They won't let them in up the road. They're still up there taking soil samples, going around with their equipment, all sorts of stuff. So this is an example of, a UFO-made meadow circle. And we hear lots of stories about this, and I'm convinced that, from the research that these type exist also. But again, they tend to be simpler and the more basic. What we saw here in Wiltshire starting in the 90s were these more complicated patterns. And, these much bigger, just a whole different scale. And it seems to me those are the ones, that we saw the effects on all of our equipment and so forth. So they were real too. They're both real. The ones that the UFOs make are real, and the ones that the people make are real. They're just real in different ways.
Right. Okay.
That's my point of view. People don't have to agree with me, but that's
where I'm at with it. That's fine. I mean, just before we get too far away from it, I suppose I did bring up a graphic. This is the actual formation that you said you saw us make, which was, you can kind of call it, quote, commercial in respect of the farmer was paid. We didn't get paid to do it. Sort of basically, it was an R, which is for digital radio, which is in the UK, digital radio, which transmits nationally. And, it was a fairly simple formation in many ways. We did it in daylight. And also present, which I sort of like to tell people the story, but you were a witness to this. Also present was Linda Moulton Howe.
Right.
And Linda Moulton Howe, actually watching us doing this, you came to the conclusion, which I found kind of weird at the time, in trying to deal with researchers, not knowing, which researchers are going to kind of accept what you're saying or which researchers are going to dismiss what you're saying. Linda Moulton Howe stood there and watched the whole thing, saw you getting these strange readings on your equipment and thinking, whoa, this is kind of not what we were expecting, and chatting about that. And then everybody went back to this pub and had a meal, and Linda pronounced that she thought that we were CIA agents. So whereas you had kind of accepted what we were offering in terms of come out and see a circle being made, and it helped you understand your equipment and made you rethink your theories, Linda went off on a really, strange tangent with all of this and has never really wanted to speak to me since. This, watching us make a circle.
Right. We found a lot of researchers are actually like that.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting phenomenon in itself. As a sociologist, it's something that we're particularly interested in is people's beliefs about things, and are they open-minded or not? I mean, can people change their ideas with new information, or do they feel that they want to protect their interests or what they perceive to be their interests, so they don't want to tell the truth? I was actually told by someone at the Glastonbury Crop Circle Symposium, it was actually Michael Glickman. And
right.
We happened to leave at the time as Stuart Wilde was talking. He was really drunk. And we both left at the same time. We went into the Galactic Cafe across the street.
Right.
And I mean, I've never really shared this with people before, but he actually told me that, he said, listen, we had a meeting a couple days ago, and Ron and Peter have been, Ron Russell and Peter Sorensen have been voted out of the group. But there's still time for you, Simeon, if you renounce man-made, your interest in man-made circles.
Really?
Yes. He said, we haven't decided about you yet, whether to expel you like we've expelled Ron and Peter. But if you renounce your interest in man-made circles, we will consider keeping you in the Wiltshire group. I mean, we all know who we're talking about here, people who are, put these conferences on and so forth.
Yeah.
And he said, it's up to you. It's your decision. And I said, Michael, I think there's something to learn from these man-made circles. I mean, there's it's interesting to me, and I intend to pursue this line of research. And he said, well, then the chips will fall where they may.
Oh dear.
And
wow.
That was the last conversation. We used to be friends before that and interested. We found a lot of the researchers were pretty hostile to our new point of view. And I mean, I can understand coming from where they were, why they wouldn't want to change. At the same time, it's not particularly honest to, when you do have new information, not to incorporate it into your point of view. If you consider yourself to be a modern, open-minded person that, is in touch with reality. And it's, at the same time, I have to say, I think some people need to believe in a different story for whatever reason, and I don't want to take that away from them if they, for some reason, it holds their world together to believe that humans can't do this. If that's important to them, then for psychological reasons, I don't think I should be the one to sort of burst their bubble. It's really up to them to look at the data, but I'm certainly open about it. I mean, I've written about it in Opening Minds. I certainly have it on my blog and so forth. I'm quite open about what's going on with this, and
Sure.
It attracts those sorts of people. If people aren't ready for that, they will continue to kind of pursue that. It's just interesting, though, that the researchers, people who call themselves researchers, they say one thing to you, and they present a different idea to the public. I mean, I had one very well-known researcher, a woman who is pretty well-known, who puts on conferences with her partner. And she came up to me and said, at the conference in Andover, remember there used to be one at the Cricklade College? Right?
Yes, I remember it well.
Right. She came up to me and said, what's your point of view on this? What have you seen and so forth? And I told her kind of about the R and so forth. And she said, ever since I made one with my partner back in 1995, we've known that they were all man-made. And
right.
I said, all of them? She said, well, most of them. I said, well, how come you don't tell people? She said, the public isn't ready.
Yeah.
The public isn't ready. And here we are, that was in year 2000, here we are 10 years later, and still, I think the public is ready. I mean, if you look at the state of the world, we need new energy technologies, new ways of looking things, new ideas. And these crop formations, we'll look at some of the video in a moment of
Sure.
the astounding things we've seen on our equipment. There's some sort of energy field there in the man-made ones and perhaps the other non-man-made ones, even though I haven't seen those here, to my belief, since I've been here in '97. That needs to be explored. This is how, this is important. And yet we have still conferences based on the theme that, humans can't do this and so forth. And it's kind of preposterous. It's kind of preposterous.
Well, it does seem like there are there are always going to be some circles out there. I mean, we say this. I mean, I'm quite open about saying I think most of them are man-made, and because of the look of them, the look they have and the way they look like they're constructed. But, going back a few years, I don't know everybody who's made every single circle. I know a lot of the people who made most of the circles, but there are always going to be some that are not explained. And
can I ask you, what do you think about this one? This is something we saw last year at Westbury.
Sure,
I don't even know if this is a crop circle, but
let's have a little look.
It doesn't look like the type that I've seen around here. It's kind of got this pattern.
Oh, good. Yeah.
See this? Now this to me doesn't look man-made. I don't think this is man-made. I don't even know if this is what this is, but it's a circle. It's splayed out. I don't see any signs of boards pressing down there. This to me is the original phenomena.
Well, we even took some photos of something very similar to that on our way with a flight to, where is it now? To Pitt in Hampshire, I believe it is, a place called Pitt. And in going along, we spotted something like this, a few of these in the field. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but maybe this is the original phenomena. Like I've been telling people,
you can see simple, a couple groups of circles. There's a little the grape shot's there. Everything is there.
Yes.
Is this wind damage? Is this an ionic plasma?
I would think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
The thing is that people have kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater. That's what I normally say. The researchers aren't interested in this sort of stuff anymore. They kind of say if it's complicated geometry, then it must be human, and if it's not complicated geometry, then it's probably sorry, did I get that right then? Or am I pressing buttons? If it's complicated geometry, it can't be human.
Exactly.
If it's a basic circle, then that's the human stuff. And I think that they've basically dispensed with these circles now and aren't researching them. Some people are starting to get the message that maybe the simple circles, because it's fascinating how you hear your own words being repeated back to you. In research community, and more and more people are starting to say now, oh yes, it might be humans, but the humans have paranormal effects in them when they're doing that. I'm thinking, it's my words are being repeated back to me, and it's other people's words that I hear when people are saying these things can't be done by people. It's people like Colin Andrews from many years ago. They're repeating Colin's words and they're repeating Michael Glickman's words, and everybody takes their stuff from sound bites from television programs and kind of repeats it back out. And you can almost sort of say, hang on, stop, I'll finish the sentence for you because I know what you're going to say next. It's almost like people don't do their own research. They take other people's research, absorb it, and then regurgitate this. And then they're very, very keen to defend their positions. When you actually, get people and you say, well, hang on, how do you know that? Have you researched it? And they say, oh, well, of course it's true. It's in all the books and all the television programs. And you say, well, TV programs aren't what you think, and researchers sometimes get it wrong, and you have to do your own research.
Well, can I give you an example of that?
Sure, by all means.
You've heard this idea of the magical bends in the stalks.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we've gone into this, but please do give us your take on that.
Before we get into some of the really strange stuff that we've seen in and around some of these, we actually encountered these magically bent stalks in an entirely legal formation that we did in Cheryl with you in 2003, right? Remember that? And the farmer had been, let's get it up on the screen here. We paid the farmer and everything, and we went out. We didn't make it as big or as complicated as we wanted. I mean, I think we had some equipment failure, interestingly enough, and we didn't totally complete it.
Right.
When we went back the next day, we found these bent nodes.
Right.
A day or two later, which led me to believe that this is a reaction of the plant to stress. It's in a bent position, it's trying to right itself up, or it's being heated in a way that it normally wouldn't be, it's not shaded by the other stalks, something like that.
Yeah.
There are things called heat shock proteins, plants have different mechanisms for dealing with extreme temperatures and so forth. That's why they're so strong. And this could be heat shock proteins filling in the nodes or something to protect the plant from excess heat. I'm not sure exactly, what it is, but we found this in our own information. I mean, we made this. We know this is man-made because we made it, and there we find these bent nodes again. So this is kind of one of the myths. This is one of the litmus tests, right, that we originally thought we had, and there we find it in our own formation. And going back to the bloom, by the way, what we learned eventually from you was that the bloom grows back pretty quickly in the darkness. And so even if people had been trampling on it, let's say at 2 or 3 a.m., by the time a researcher gets in there at 10, that bloom could have grown back.
Yes.
And this is what we did find. So we didn't know, when we made our formations, the one in Hill Martin, we found that if we waxed the bottom of the boards, it didn't damage the plants as much. And we had large sections. We brought in a researcher, by the way, and she couldn't explain how we had made it without damaging the bloom. So these ideas, the thing is, and this is important for everyone to remember, when you hear something, don't just believe it because you're told it. Go out for yourself and try it. And don't believe me either. I mean, go out for yourself and try this, and then make up your mind. Just because someone says it on a stage that you consider to be authority doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And this leads us to question a lot of other things. How many people do we believe just because they're an authority figure? Governments and other authority figures, and they're not really telling us the truth. They're telling us what's in their interest. So it's very interesting, Matt. This kind of led me to reevaluate how I see lots of different things that we're all exposed to, which is people in positions of authority who are not completely telling the truth because for some reason they don't want you to know the complete truth. It's going to hurt their interest in some way. So they're telling you a little fairy tale. And we're, like good little kids, we're swallowing these fairy tales. We shouldn't be. We should go out and try it for ourselves. I encourage people, go out, find a farmer, pay them, and go out and make your own crop circle and see what happens.
And of course, this is the ultimate taboo, really. We're from people who are kind of fundamentalist and very, very much believers, and banging the table saying crop circles are not made by people, and if you talk to those people, we'll cut you off, which is sort of what you've had, and that happens quite a lot to people. We'll cut you off, which leads me to kind of use the term cult then, because that's what cults do.
It's very similar to a cult.
Yes.
It's more like a religion than a scientific enterprise. I mean, even scientists can get cultish if you know this, Matt. I mean, anyone who's familiar with academics knows that scientists can be extremely narrow-minded. And I was at a conference recently. Someone had discovered a new type of energy technology. He brought it to someone who he thought could, do a fair evaluation of the experiment and do a review of it for a journal. The guy said to him, this scientist said to the other one, he said, I know what you're doing is correct, but if it was true, I would have to reevaluate all my ideas about the universe, and I don't feel like doing that.
Yes.
I'm happily tenured. I'm done, and I'm in my later years of life. I don't really feel like reevaluating my belief systems, my mindset. Now, I mean, that type of attitude leads us to the situation we're in the planet right now, where things are really falling apart in a very serious way. Yeah. And if we don't adapt, okay, bye-bye. This is the way it works. And we have we have the ability to adapt our minds a little bit every day to new ideas and try things out and consider other points of view. And if you don't do that, you go the way of all sorts of great empires who never thought they were going to disappear, right? We don't speak Latin anymore for the most part.
Yeah.
And so it's incumbent upon all of us who think we're sort of modern people, postmodern people, to look at evidence and evaluate it critically. And that's what the crop formations and crop circles are a part of that whole phenomena. And that doesn't take away from the magic. Let me just show you one important, or should we hold that after the break?
No, that's fine. Let's
just take a look at this. This is a small one that Ron and I had permission to make in Kansas. It was very small. We had permission to make a small one. This is only about 15 feet across. We made it in about 15 minutes, okay?
Sure.
Very simple. None of the photographs came out correctly. Ron took this with his Nikon F3 mechanical camera. No electronics going on there except the light level meter, right?
Sure.
Purely a mechanical camera. Mechanical focus, mechanical aperture setting. You know the deal, right? And look at these pictures. They're all slightly blurry, and they get worse. And this isn't a man-made formation because we made it. There were 3 of us there. We were coming back from a remote viewing conference in Austin, Texas, where we had just heard Ingo Swann and another of the original remote viewers speaking. Fascinating. So,
looks like multiple exposure, 3 exposures where the camera's gone off on its side twice. And
look at this.
Color anomalies. I've seen lots of photos around
in a camera that never did this before.
Yeah.
And never did it again. Some of them were completely black, unexposed. Out of about 30 photographs, these are the only ones that came out, and they're all weird. The rest were completely black. Look at that.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, what is that? You can see me with the static meter down in the wheat, and there's some energy field there or something. I don't know what that is. And let's look at this one. What in the world is that?
Yeah.
So this is a man-made formation creating very strange anomalies. Perhaps something is creating this on a camera that never malfunctioned before, never did this sort of thing. This is what we see, and after we come back, we'll show the video of what we've seen. Cameras, batteries, and so forth, going all the way back to the 90s in what apparently are man-made formations affecting our equipment, which must mean that these crop formations are creating an unexplained energy field that science doesn't understand. And if that's true, that means that crop circles are probably one of the most important scientific discoveries in the history of our planet. I think that we can easily say that. If just moving wheat around in a geometric fashion creates this very interesting energy, and it doesn't always pop up, but it pops up some of the time in the ones that any of us could make.
Yes.
That's really interesting because we don't know what frequency it is. We don't know exactly what it is. It seems to affect our static meter a little bit, but it's not the static itself that's doing that because this equipment doesn't short out. It doesn't do this in just static fields. It could be at a quantum level. It could be a type of superconductivity. I mean, something very interesting. I mean, if you can make a formation that discharges batteries, could you make one that charges them? Or, I mean, is there some way that we could actually interface with this in a more regular way, or is it always going to be something that's anomalous? I think it's completely fascinating. I spend a lot of time, looking at science journals, Science, New Scientist, so forth, looking at some of the really new, interesting discoveries in material science that link up to, it's called metamaterials. It's ordinary materials that take on extraordinary properties when they're bent in a certain shape. Photonic crystals, liquid crystals, a whole range of technologies that are in our flat screens and all of our cell phones and everything. That's all based on these new types of exotic properties of crystals and so forth that have been developed recently. Now they're finding it in graphene and other common substances that can create superconductivity. So what I'm wondering is, and I don't know the answer, but what is it about the shape of certain formations that leads them to be activated, I know, Matt, you refer to this as natural magic, right? That's what you refer to. And it is. It's a natural magic. It's a natural technology. It's showing us that we can have technology that doesn't have to be too complicated. It's natural. It's just coming right from nature, just with natural shapes, phi ratios, nested crescents, fractal type shapes. It's almost like the crop circle is like an antenna for some energy field, a fractal antenna. And it's tapping into each one of those little grains of wheat. It's like a little antenna stalk, right? When you get them all arranged in a big field, you have some sort of resonance.
Exactly, yes.
It's like a waveguide or a resonant receiver, or I would say even a transceiver, because sometimes things come out of them too, with balls of light and so forth. I've seen those, and I've seen enough videos, which I think are actually the real thing, of those balls of light.
Yes.
I think it's an absolutely fascinating phenomena. And again, I mean, if it hadn't been for you, we wouldn't have even seen this whole side of it. So you're one of the big catalysts that, caused us to reevaluate it and realize it's even more amazing than we thought. Not only do we have the original phenomena, we have people kind of learning how to create this shapes, and then their formations in ways they don't even understand are creating these really weird effects, which I don't know a single scientist on the planet right now that can explain. I presented this at science conferences, by the way, and no one knows why this could be happening. So I just think it's fascinating, and it keeps us coming back.
I think the work of Rupert Sheldrake is quite interesting with morphogenic fields, i.e. that we're able to pick up things at a distance, and maybe monkeys on an island that have no contact to the land, the 100th monkey syndrome. If a monkey on the land learns a new trick, so do the monkeys on the island, even though they're not connected. They physically cannot, give this information to each other, but somehow through the ether they seem to be connected. And I wonder when we have instances where teams of circle makers are going out to the same field on the same night, going to the same location. And this year we've had 2 formations that have appeared where the circle maker teams don't appear. They swear blind that they did not give the idea to do these formations to each other. And you'll know exactly which ones I'm talking about because it's pretty obvious. I think I've kind of hinted at it on another show, but I mean, 2 formations appeared this year which were practically the same in you cannot mistake it. And yet the Circle Maker team say they didn't know that each other were out doing this. So where are they getting this information from? Are we all downloading it from the universe, or are we downloading it sideways from human beings to human beings? Or, are aliens trying to send us some sort of radio signal that certain people are tuned into and pick up and go out and do things? Where are these synchronicities and where are these coincidences coming from? They're more than coincidence. There's a lot more going on here, and I think we're only just scratching the surface. It's interesting what you say about resonance, because the whole thing of resonance in sound, if nature sort of mimics certain things on certain levels, if you have sound and say for instance the bones in our ears, I think there's lots and lots of little bones which are connected to nerve endings, and they're all tuned to certain frequencies. So when you hear a sound at say a certain frequency, that bone vibrates. So if you go up the frequency, the smaller bone vibrates. So it's like if you have a tuning fork, the tuning forks you used to get in school, and what they used to do is they used to bang the tuning fork, a little metal tuning fork, they'd bang it on a table, it would go ding, and it would make a sound. Now then, the experiment is, and if you remember from school, it's quite simple, if you get another tuning fork near it, when you bang this one, if this is the same frequency fork, this one starts to vibrate across because it's picking up the frequency. So it's the same size, it's the same tuned fork, it starts to vibrate as well. Now that's known as resonance. I think it's induction resonance. But basically, what you're talking about with sound is things are tuned to a certain frequency. But what happens, this is just a question I have, and I don't know if scientists out there can answer this, but what do you have when you have a shape? A shape is something that might, in the small macrocosm world, or maybe in an even bigger world outside us that we don't understand, may have its counterparts. So if we get something that's the same shape and size, or if it has a shape that resonates on a different dimensional level, maybe something smaller than it or something bigger than it or the same size as it can resonate when you create that shape. So maybe these things have an energy that we don't understand. That's just a question I have.
No, it's exactly right.
And why is it that these things are in people's psyches? These ideas are there. Are we all picking up on the same ideas because we all have the same kind of geometry in our brains? So therefore people think the same type of shapes to create at the same times? Or, what actually is the mechanism? And I think that we're only scratching the surface. And
can you bring this slide up for a second?
I certainly can.
I've got one that usually kind of illustrates this.
Shape and resonance.
Yes, you were talking about the inner ear.
Yeah.
We have a slide of it here.
Sure.
Now,
there we go.
This is an interesting thing. Scientists have studied whether the phi ratio shape is important for us to hear properly. For everyone, a lot of people know what this is.
Right.
Phi ratio 1.618 to 1. It describes lots of shapes in nature, growth patterns, Fibonacci series, and so forth.
Right.
And, our inner ear, like you're saying, Matt, and our heart muscle are shaped around a phi ratio.
Right.
Like a nautilus shell.
Ah, yes,
Not
yes.
the Archimedean spiral, but this kind of, as it twists and turns, as it unwinds or as it winds, it grows at a faster rate. So what they found recently was that if we had an inner ear that was shaped any differently than a phi ratio, it wouldn't work as well with the different frequency ranges. In fact, our ability to hear is based on a phi ratio. It doesn't, you don't get that evenness of volume with other shapes.
Right.
So that's what you're proposing is really important, which is essentially that different shapes have different frequencies, like tuning forks. In fact, Matt, the interesting thing is when we teach remote viewing, resonant viewing, as I like to call it, we actually use that tuning fork as an analogy of how you can pick up information from a distance, apparently a non-local signal, without getting the information through your eyes and your ears. It's because we all have a shape. We're shaped by nature with these phi ratio patterns in our bodies. Even our fingers have this phi ratio shape. The bones are in a phi ratio, 1.6 to 1, each bone throughout our hands, all the way up through our wrist and our arm.
Right.
Yeah, so we're built around phi ratios. And so that gives us the ability to perceive information. It's just a possibility. So are these crop formations, each one like a specific frequency transceiver, like a tuning fork? And is it allowing us to perceive a broader range of reality than we would normally pick up or perceive something that we normally don't see? And this is why people have these experiences around crop formations. They're not making it up. It really is giving them access to something bigger, which is why people enjoy them so much. And the circle makers tell us they have these strange experiences, sometimes while making them, lots of apparent sightings of people in and around them. Later on, the balls of light, anomalous light phenomena, UFOs and so forth. Lots of photographs and experiences with this. So it's something like that they're like a tuning fork. Just like you're saying, each one's a very specific tuning fork because it has such a specific shape. Some are simple, some are complex. But it's a really good question.
And I mean, I even remember some research that was done recently, and I used to talk about this in my lectures, whereby there was experiments. And by the way, I am going to ask you questions. I haven't forgotten about you in channel.
Yeah.
I did say I was going to ask the questions, but we'll come to those in a second. I remember talking about the power of intent was being experimented upon. There were two things I used to talk about: the power of intent. They'd have a random number-generating robot, which if you statistically analyze it, which of course Simeon's into statistics, so he can talk about that. But statistically analyze, it's a random thing. So this robot would move around in a random motion. It was told to turn left, right based on the random numbers, and it would move around, and they would watch it with a video camera, and they would analyze it, and they would say, it's totally random. It's random. Then basically they would have a glass plate, and next to it in the other compartment, separated by this glass plate, which also had a metal cover so it couldn't it couldn't see through to the other side, there'd be a load of chicks on the other side. Now chicks are basically, they respond to movement, and they think, mother chick, mother hen. So they would obviously flock around mum and follow mum around. But then basically what they do is they've got the video camera pointing down on this random robot, and they've got the chicks on the other side. And there's no statistical movement at all in this thing that can be shown other than random. Once they move the slide out of the way so that the chicks can see through the glass, they see the movement and they all flock against the glass, looking into the other side, seeing the robot moving around and thinking it's their mother, which of course they would imprint upon as well. They would actually think it is their mother. So the chicks are there and they're thinking, mother, and they must be thinking, I want to be near to the mother. But the glass is preventing them. Then guess what? Statistically, it was shown that the robot would move more times onto the side where the glass is than random chance would allow. It suddenly was not a random thing anymore. Now, they'd done this sort of experiment, and also quantum mechanics, I think, if it's the right term, quantum mechanics, this business of non-location, is it non-location?
Non-locality. Yeah.
Non-locality, where you take an atom or a substance or something like that, maybe an atom, and you kind of split it off in some way, and then there's a kind of a signature there that this was originally part of the same atom, and you move one part of it across a distance, and they say it could be across the universe, it could be across the other side of the universe. And as we know, if we send light across the universe, it takes thousands of years to get to the nearest galaxy or star or whatever. But they reckon that if you move an atom across the other side of the universe and you spin the electrons around this atom across the universe, the spin will happen on that atom as well. But how can it do it? Because they're not connected by space, surely, but they appear to be connected by subspace. Somehow, something beneath space is connecting them. So guess what? Even things on an atomic level are connected across space by an unseen force. Now, my sort of philosophy or thing that I'm trying to look into from this perspective is, well, if the power of intent can create something that affects something else, then the crop circles are doing this by the power of intent of shape. So therefore, the shape affects people's minds. People's minds affect reality, can affect other people and other things to happen, to move things out of a chance or out of a random situation. And the quantum mechanics seems to allow for this to happen across large distances. I kind of think, well, maybe if somebody is sending these messages out, they could be sending them from a distant galaxy, and maybe people are picking them up because we have something in us which is tuned into this frequency thing, and we pick up these messages. I think that the mechanics is there in science waiting to be understood, that maybe we're all connected and we've never really tried to give credit to it. Maybe people in the past used to, because these things are now taboo. People don't talk about them, and they're not supposed to kind of believe in this stuff because it's all crazy and paranormal, and you don't want to believe in conspiracy theories and paranormality because you're crazy. But I like to think in these sorts of things. So without saying too much about it more, if you've got any points on that, Simeon, I mean...
it's a really good point, and I think what you're saying, it's all possible and it's definitely probable, is that we're connected in ways we don't understand. We find that you have this, what we call telepathic overlay, around circles, people imagining patterns that appear, or you've talked about examples of people spontaneously going out to make patterns that other people were meditating upon.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, and so it suggests alternate pathways of information flow that is not part of conventional science. Now, you don't need to call that paranormal. That's what people refer to things that they just are outside the realm of understanding. It's simply something we don't understand yet, just like, the light bulb, electricity, manned flight, all sorts of inventions that we now accept as commonplace. There's a wonderful book by Stanton Friedman called Science Was Wrong, and it just goes through the history of all the things that science was wrong about. Just about everything we have around us that we accept as self-evident now. You found very well-known scientists of the day saying, "No, that's impossible, you can't get to the moon," or, people didn't believe the Wright brothers for 2 years after they'd been flying. Scientific American said the Wright brothers were a hoax, okay? So, so history is really on the side of expanding beyond of what you know into a new level of understanding. And you don't have to call it paranormal. It's just something that you don't understand yet. If you want to call it witchcraft or paranormal, it's fine. But it's just we don't understand exactly what this is. But we have all the evidence of these types of things you're mentioning. It's fascinating stuff.
And I think, was it Arthur C. Clarke said that any technology sufficiently advanced enough would appear like magic to people that didn't understand it.
Exactly. What we're really dealing with is mindset.
Yes.
Can people adapt their minds to reality, or do they attempt to hold on to the past and just say, nothing's... they wanted to close the patent office like in 1890. Didn't someone suggest, some leading person in our country, in the U.S., they suggested closing the patent office. The idea being that everything that had been invented had already been invented. This is before radio and, widespread use of electricity and so forth. So, things change in much bigger and more, vast ways than our minds are usually capable of receiving. And the crop formations are part of this whole picture that I am confident are going to lead us to very interesting new understandings of plants and nature, shapes, energy, and so forth. It's quite possible that instead of just growing these plants as a source of food, right, that we could be growing them for other reasons and using them for a wide variety of purposes, communications, medical treatment, and so forth, if we understood the resonance patterns and the effects. And that's an interesting thing, Matt. Not all the formations seem to be active in ways we can see, and some are. Why are they different? It's a fascinating question.
Yep, indeed. Well, we should get to some of the questions. Yep. In the channel, we've got the chat room channel, which we told you about earlier on, and you can scroll down and have a look at that if you want to see what's going on. As long as it's live, you'll see people in there chatting. Basically, somebody said, Bluestone said, did Simeon ever find any circles that did not give a reading with your equipment?
Yes, there were certainly some in the beginning that were really flat. You remember those German researchers, Koch and Kyborg, Kyborg has passed on.
Yes.
They would make a man-made formation every year. It was a good reference point for us. And those were always pretty statically flat from our measurements. And some of the other ones we'd go into, the simpler ones seem to be, pretty flat. So not all of them are active. Some of them, and it does seem to fade away over time. Even in the basket formation, we found quite a jump when we walked in there, even though it had been mowed down. We never got to it, while it was still there. But we found quite a jump in that mowed down area. And sometimes we have found some of the large ecstatic, it's in this field of energy. The Earth is like, if you go all the way down into the wheat, it's like -3 volts, usually -2 or 3 volts. As you go higher, it gets more positive, because the sun is positive and the Earth is negative. And it goes up to millions of volts as you go towards the sun. So what the formation does, it changes the gradient. Instead of it being all the same at one level, you have the wheat is now flattened. But it's not just because it's flattened, because we've measured the wind damage and the tram lines. They don't seem to affect it. Something about that lay, in material science, they call it anisotropy, everything aligned in a common direction. It's a term used in liquid crystal material applications. That's why these screens do what they do. You're controlling the direction of the crystals. They're twisting and turning. When you get that anisotropy, that's when you seem to get the most change in the static gradient. Yeah, so some of them are flat. Now that one back in 2000, what we called the Earth's magnetic grid at Avebury Truslove, if anyone remembers that one.
Yep.
That one was really interesting because it made the static meter go alternately positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. You remember the shape of that? They're all these kind of like a grid of magnetism. Some people saw it that way. That one was really interesting because it made it go back and forth. So it's almost like a designer circuit, these formations. You can see some of the pictures that Matt can show us later, There are all these different arrows that, the man-made ones can be made with the Lego. It's planned ahead of time. That different directionality almost looks like a circuit if you just see the schematic of it. I used to build electronic kits as a kid.
Yeah.
I was really fascinated by crystal radios. No power needed. You still heard the radio station good and loud in there.
Yeah.
And these formations are like...
resonance.
Yeah, they're like kind of natural crystal radios. We're just picking up ET now or something. I mean, I don't know exactly what we're picking up, but it's something different. It's something out of the ordinary.
Well, indeed. I mean, this is the thing. SETI is looking for signals from space, but the thing is, if the signals did arrive from distant galaxies, because they come from radio, it would mean that the civilizations would be, tens of thousands of years older.
Exactly.
And maybe even from some galaxies, if we received a transmission now, they could have been 1 million years dead, the people that sent them. But what about this possibility that there's a way to transmit? It's almost like Star Trek. It's like through subspace. This business of you spin this electron here and across the universe, it spins the electron there, and you can transmit across space without the time effect. It's instantaneous transmission.
Exactly.
Of course, it's great for a television idea because it means, you don't have to sort of wait the time to get your response. So unlike the broadcasters who seem to sort of have problems with using broadband and delays and lags and things like that. But from a realistic point of view, people are waiting for this signal from space, but surely any advanced civilization wouldn't be using radio waves to transmit because it's a very unsophisticated, time-laggy system. So maybe we're not listening using the correct equipment yet.
Right.
And eventually we're going to find a technology where once we tune in, we'll realize we've got the whole satellite spectrum. We've got all these TV channels out there and alien civilizations, communications and mobile telephones on distant planets. And, we're going to have all this sort of stuff is out there, but we just haven't tapped into it yet. And... It's kind of interesting.
It's a good point because, we do have this SETI operation going on in the U.S. and around the world. They listen for these extraterrestrial signals. And as you're pointing out, that would have to come from a civilization that probably didn't exist anymore. Mm. Or, by the time it got to you, it would be millions of years later from those distances. So why would it just, we're even phasing away from using radio, right? We're switching to digital, which eventually could go to an optical. There's these new optical transmission circuits they say are much more efficient than regular electronics. It's using light, modulating light.
Yes.
It's like the bandwidth is like 1,000 times what we have right now. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't pick that up with we're even moving away from that. And yet we somehow expect, ET to be using radios. The civilizations that are probably using radios, their signal probably hasn't gotten here yet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't, it's a good idea. We should be looking at other bandwidths. And could it be coming through crop circles? Well, why not? Mm. It's a possibility.
And the resonant viewing, what's that transmitting on? That's not transmitting on microwaves, is it? It's kind of like, if it was, you'd kind of, you'd be picking up all this noise from people and able to sort of work it out in a lab, and people don't seem to be able to pick up transmissions from people, apart from small electrical ones. But
it's another type of resonance.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea. Conventional science doesn't accept it. I should just mention, in your country here, you're familiar with Brian Josephson?
Brian Josephson. No, I'm not. But
he is one of the Brian Josephson is one of the discoverers of superconductivity in the 1960s. He was working with something called Cooper pairs. It's when electrons pair up instead of repelling each other, and they kind of skate down ice. One of the electrons removes the resistance for the second one, creates superconductivity. One of the big challenges for science right now is room temperature superconductivity, right? Because all our technology creates heat. And if you can have superconductivity, you have like a fraction of the heat, which is more processing power with less energy. So the idea is, you can create it at 0 Kelvin. Can you create it at room temperature? All these substances they're working with right now to raise it up slowly to room temperature. Brian Josephson discovers this in the 1960s and says this could be responsible for extrasensory perception, psychic phenomena, telepathy, and so forth. This type of superconductivity, because when you have superconductivity, you get something called quantum tunneling, which is a relative of what you mentioned a few minutes ago, quantum entanglement. You have these electrons spontaneously tunneling through material, popping out on the other side without actually going through the intervening space. They They just tunnel through space-time and end up over here instead of over here in superconducting systems. And he thought this could have something to do with telepathy and psychic functioning. He's promptly denounced by the physics community here, and they were going to make a stamp for him. He's a Nobel Prize winner. They were going to make a stamp for him, and the physicists complained because of his beliefs in his speculation that there could be some scientific explanation for remote viewing, things like that. He is now not on your stamp.
Yeah, but
so think how narrow-minded that is. I mean, he's just suggesting the guy wins a Nobel Prize, and I know people have spoken to him. He's open-minded to other phenomena. I mean, what is destroying the batteries out in some of the circles that we visit? Whenever you'd like to, by the way, we can look at some of those videos if you think.
Sure.
But you know,
isn't it like religion?
There's something going on there.
Isn't it like religion, though? I mean, what we're talking about here is science has killed religion, so people say, but it hasn't actually killed religion. What it's done is it's created a new one. The new religion is science.
Right.
Science is the new religion, and you have, instead of popes, you have doctors and professors and deans of universities. And when they decide that what you're saying is a little bit too on the edge and they don't like it, then they do it. Is it a Copernicus where they lock you in your house, or was it Copernicus was sort of house arrest?
It was
for
Copernicus
saying,
and
Galileo
was threatened. He recanted at the stake, and Giordano Bruno was actually burned at the stake. You know why? He suggested the universe was infinite. Whoa, very creepy.
Yeah.
The universe was infinite. Well, not in the minds of the people back then.
Yes.
In the Middle Ages. So, the history of humankind is to be very narrow-minded and to turn things into religion. And I agree with you, Matt. I think science has become a religion in a sense because, we have lots of new interesting cold fusion.
Yes.
Cold fusion. Now, you want to know the truth? The U.S. Navy has been pursuing cold fusion ever since the 1980s, since Fleischmann and Pons discovered it at the University of Utah. MIT comes along and says it's not true. Patent Office says it's not real. Everyone says they're hoaxers, right?
Yeah.
That's the word they use?
Yep.
And turns out, looks like they're right. There are labs in Israel that have been reproducing it. It looks like the labs that didn't get the effect, according to people I've talked to, were using the wrong type of palladium. It's just a very sensitive reaction. It can take weeks. This is where you take heavy water, you put the palladium rods in, and after a while it can start generating more energy than is going into it.
Right.
From a fusion type process. It's just an example of, we had an example in '89, these chemists from the University of Utah said they had done it, and everyone denounces them. They jump on them. They lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Now it looks like they were right.
Exactly. And I mean, it's like a form of, house arrest. We'll take your job off you. We'll take your money off you. Then you won't be able to live. So going back to a point you were making earlier on, which I wrote down to make a note of so I didn't forget, but it's kind of like you said, these people who just say, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm getting near retirement age. It's just going to affect my pension. Let's just keep it going.
Exactly.
and just don't fuck with the system. Don't fuck with the status quo. And that's
boring.
It's
That's
not
what
good.
that is. It's very boring.
It is boring, and
I mean, why not rock the boat? It's not like we couldn't use some new energy technology right now. We're still using the same freaking car technology that existed 100 years ago. I mean, it's starting to change. It's a little overdue, especially since we know there's other types of technologies out there that could be doing the job instead.
But it's like with the banks, isn't it? I mean, we're all kind of sick to death of the banks, but you can't get rid of them because it's just such a good model for how to rape people of their money, and you can't get rid of it. So it's like cars and petrol. They know really that the petrol's going to last a lot longer than they like to say, but they like to say, oh, it's going to go tomorrow, the petrol's going to go tomorrow, because then it drives the price up. And they know that actually the price is quite low because they own it. So, of course, if you can drive the price up, then you make maximum profit. So let's have a few wars. Let's keep the tension going. Let's make people scared. And actually, there's not so much to be scared about as they like to put it across. And hey, if petrol disappeared tomorrow, I'm sure they'd bring something out in a couple of weeks that they've had, under the counter to replace it because, hey, the world must go on. And these people have got this stuff under the bloody counter, I think. That's my personal belief. But anyway, question from channel. And by the way, people have been saying, great guest tonight.
Oh, thanks.
They really like you. And they said more shows like this. So, you're definitely on the list to come back.
Great. Enjoying it.
Somebody says, did the energy ever fade over time on your gizmo, i.e., I think the electrostatic thing? So
Good question.
Yeah.
This is a really good question.
Yeah.
And this is what we always wonder. In fact, it does seem that the energy fades away. I even came back one year in '99 in October to measure some of these fields again after the wheat had been harvested. That's an extreme case of it fading away. In fact, it was Busty Taylor who asked me, he said, Simeon, how do you know it's not underground springs that's generating this static charge? How do you know it's anything to do with the formations? Good question.
Yeah.
So back at the Devil's Den formation, we could play that video in a moment of a lot of devices failing there. I was there. Okay, I go into this formation. I'm with a Japanese researcher, Masao Maki, who had published several books saying no bleeping way in his language humans could make these, only to meet Matt and others around the same time we began to learn that these were man-made, the big ones around here at least, and in my view. And his camcorder starts showing dirty heads indicator, brand new mini DV camera. You know, remember that format we used?
Yeah.
Mini digital. Okay, so I should have been on my guard. So he stops walking. I go in with the static meter. We can bring this one up. This is the, for those who don't remember, this is the, that formation is kind of out of the way in 5 field down, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I go in with my static meter. Immediately, battery goes dead.
Right, okay. Have you still got it up on? Oh, you haven't brought it up yet.
I'm going to find it right here.
No problem.
This was a mind blower for me. I mean, this is before I meet Matt, so I don't know whether this is man-made or not. It took me a whole day to find this, just hiking around it. So I walked from Avebury to find it, you know? And here, okay, so this is the pattern. And so I'm walking around. We're told there's something new out there. You know, I find it, but it's too late in the day. I go back the next day with Masamak. We find the road going in from, there's a gallops up there, you know, where they train horses, race horses. We walk down. His camcorder stops working. Then my static meter, literally at the edge of the formation, walking into this guy, literally at that edge, right there. You could bring it up now, Matt.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay, let's bring him up.
Literally at the edge, the static meter goes -3 and just stays there. And these are new batteries, it just stops, right?
Yeah.
Then Rob Spate of the Noise Room comes in. We have that video, which we can bring in a moment, of his GPS. He's walking in, all of a sudden he says, you know, what happens? My GPS isn't working. So I see 3 devices simultaneously, and you know, within 10 minutes, right? So I go back the next day, same thing happens again. I go back to this one in October '99 to measure it. You could see this, the ghost formation, you know, where the seeds have been pressed into the ground, people walking on it, green kind of coming up. The rest of the field is bare. Go down, measure it, no effect on the static meter. Now, when we were in there and we got the static meter working again, putting new batteries in, it was really jumping around quite a bit. Over time, it faded, and then several months later, no detectable effect at all. So it's something to do with the wheat being there. Perhaps when it's more moist, like this is a pretty, you know, fresh crop there.
Right.
So this is, you know, these are the batteries. Can we pull up the video on this one?
Yeah, we can do that. If we bring the video up, you can talk whilst the video is playing, and you just go through it, okay?
Yeah.
So here we go.
GPS has just gone wrong, basically, and the screen has gone.
So we're
the screen's sort of pixelation. Let me get
It's like it's been pushed.
yeah, you can hear the audio.
This is solid plastic.
So
The
this
last
is
time I had
Rob.
this, all my batteries got red
and
hot.
These unexplainable
Sulfur
battery
batteries.
failures. It's 14 hours when he came in. Now they're flat as pancake.
They're flat as a pancake.
How long does this footage go on for? This one?
Oh, about 40 seconds.
Okay.
Pretty short.
That's only the second time it's ever happened. Yeah, last time.
You had 14 hours when you came in.
14 hours of battery life when I came in. Just put that.
And this is this year?
99.
Oh, sorry.
1999.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Devil's Den formation.
Oh, that's actually finished now. There we go. Let's bring it back. It does this loopy thing.
So, I mean, this is, you know, in my view, a man-made formation, now that I know what I know about these, creating other effects. Now, here's the thing. Other people I spoke to that summer lost their batteries in this. I know one woman who told me her batteries didn't take a charge for 6 months after being in that formation, an American.
Right.
So a lot of people experienced battery failure in that particular formation. It was very energetically active. Why? We don't really know. But that one did it, and
Daft question, but this is just me asking this. The people that have had problems with these batteries, have they been staying in a hotel, warm conditions, or have they been camping out?
For the most part, warm conditions, yeah. But this is a pretty warm night when we're down there. I mean, we're not...
yeah, it's not the extreme conditions that could affect the batteries. Because
I don't think so. I mean, I've never seen this happen at the beach or in mountains or other places you bring your cameras. And
I know that having things out when it's cold at night, you get the condensation effect with it. Condensation forms on objects and things and gets inside stuff.
Sure, but this is July. It's warm. This is warm weather.
You still get condensation at night, I believe, because in the morning you have the mist, early morning mist, which is
right, but
condensation.
This is around 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So this
Oh, it's in the it's not.
This is not nighttime.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
sure.
all my experience is, with this has happened. Regular weather conditions.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to establish, the circumstances, because I know sometimes we've had people going into circles and saying, my camera's failed. But when you actually say, well, where are you? And they say, well, I was staying in a tent, and you say, well, it's probably damp in the camera.
I can understand that.
Yeah,
I've seen cases where people's laptops stopped working at Silbury Hill, 2006. It did start raining, and I thought, it could be moisture or something like that. Why don't you bring up the screen on this one for a second?
Yeah, sure. Gonad says pound shop batteries, as in cheap batteries, like from a pound shop where you get 100 batteries for 20 pence or something. Yeah, no, probably not that.
So this is
let's have a look at this
is
image.
Martinsville, 2009.
Sure.
Looks like someone ran out of room or something there, or the extraterrestrials are being creative. You see it just goes sort of into the field there.
Yes.
Now, we were there with Colin Andrews, and his camera was destroyed at that moment in the formation. It worked when he went in. All of a sudden, it looks like the CCD just burned out. All of a sudden, he can review pictures he's taken, but nothing's coming through the lens.
Right.
Now, if this is just once in a while, you would say, look, cameras fail once in a while. I'm familiar with the counter arguments. I used to teach statistics. Some of that's what I used to teach in my class is alternate explanations. It's not always what you think, but this happens too much to be, in my view, to be a random event. I mean, we see it once a summer, and no one's ever encountered this that I've talked to in other places.
Yes.
So, interestingly enough, the first time I encountered this, 97, with Colin and Ron Russell at Danebury Hill Fort. Remember that it was a kind of a triangular type formation. Ron puts his camcorder down on the ground as Colin is speaking.
Right.
Never works again that summer. Sends it back to Sony. They say the solder has melted by the power transformer. It has to be resoldered. Charge him a couple $100. So that was the first time I saw it. Actually, it was 97. Then at Eastfield and Lockeridge, 98. You'll remember the Hydra formation and that.
Yeah, that's what I made.
Oh, well, now we can learn something, okay? The Hydra formation and the one at Eastfield, which was another type of fractal, interesting fractal type, what was it, 8-sided pattern, something 9? Something.
Oh, yeah. Right, okay.
7-sided pattern, yeah. So first I notice it's not focusing, my camera's not focusing right. We go into the Hydra. I don't have the pictures here. The camera, first of all, is not focusing properly. Then the next thing I know, the film is rewinding. In those days, it was slide film. You pushed a little recessed button to get the motor to rewind the film.
Yes,
okay, it's just rewinding on its own. I've never seen it do this when we're in the formation. So those were the first examples I saw of cameras acting strangely. It's just more examples of it.
I mean, one thing they tell you with electronics is, say you're handling computer parts, memory, things like that, they're very sensitive to static shock. Yeah. Electronic components like chips, processors, things, and what you do not want to do at any time is you don't want to get these things near static. So I'm wondering, just as as an aside, I'm wondering, you've got crop circles which you've said yourself, if you put an electrostatic meter in them, they have a high charge, and even though they're man-made, they have this high charge. Is it possible that on certain occasions there might be such a high charge that people are literally, it's acting like a lightning rod for static. They're walking into a formation and somehow it's going zip, because of the static, just something very explainable like static. And what you said then about Ron actually putting it down on the ground, he's literally, if you've got a static charge, like you've taken a woolen jumper off and then you go and touch something, you go bzz, and you can even see the static jump off your finger and you can feel a buzz, like sometimes when you get into a car. Have you got that possibly going on inside a crop circle where it could be damaging the electronics in this way?
It's certainly a possibility. You don't have a high charge in the formation per se. The wheat is still -3 like it is inside and outside. So the gradient is just shifted. It's it's a couple 100 volts different than outside. So there's a slight change. Now you do have people walking across the wheat, which could build up static.
Charge off their clothes.
You would still expect it to happen in other places. And I've spoken to a number of farmers. In fact, I spoke to one yesterday. farmer's wife from the Devizes area who said she was not particularly pleased with all these formations, and they like to cut them down as soon as they can. But I said, we're seeing these really weird effects on our cameras and batteries. She said, well, I've never experienced that out in a field. And I've asked farmers several times, have you ever experienced any sort of electronic failure when you're walking across the fields, anything like that? I've never heard anyone tell me they have. Now, I'd be open to that idea. Maybe if people experience it walking around wheat fields in general, it seems to be something about the fact that it's flattened in a way. And certainly, one possibility you'd have to look at is that it's, the kind of the walking across the rug effect. But you can get those high static charges walking across your rug, too.
Yes.
It doesn't seem to burn out your cameras, does it? I mean, we're talking about some pretty serious...
Well, it depends
failure.
whether you are trying to get the static charges when you're holding onto a camera. I mean, it would be interesting to work with some of these companies, like ask Sony the question, do you think that walking in a crop field is a place that would statically charge a camera to a point where it could become damaged?
That's right.
Maybe these companies have got answers. Maybe nobody's ever asked them. I certainly haven't.
No, someone did ask Mallory Battery Factory in Connecticut what could explain this.
Right.
Complete battery failure.
Yeah.
They said ionizing radiation, that's it.
Right.
The only thing we're talking about, nuclear radiation.
Whoa.
And here's the interesting thing, Matt. It seems to be that certain circles do this more than others. Certain types of patterns, which we think we've identified with particular circle makers because it seems to have the same signature type of weave and lay and so forth from one year to the next. We could identify them as one group or another, we think.
Yes.
Even though we're not certain. It seems that some of those types of patterns do this more than the others. So the shape and the intention seems to really matter also here. It doesn't seem like everyone's formations do this. It just seems like certain types of patterns, in my experience, do this more than others. So there is a good degree of variation. You have to wonder why does it happen more in some of the shapes, some of the lay. You want to know the truth, it seems to happen more in circular formations than in square ones.
Right.
So if it's just walking across it, it should happen evenly across many different types. It seems to happen in the one, and I could be completely wrong about this, okay, with nested circles within a larger set of circles, kind of like Devil's Den formation, that sort of pattern, and the ones with these kind of crescent type shapes. It happened at Hackpen 99. You remember that formation?
Yeah.
That one also affected the static meter. Also in that molecular type formation across from West Overton.
Right.
Same year. You remember that one?
Okay, I think I know which one you mean.
So this is one of them. Now Ron experienced this before me, but here's one of them that did it, just for all you out there. This is one that blew out the static meter, lots of crescents and so forth, circular patterns. Just fantastic design all the way around. And also it seemed to happen in this one, which is not of the same...
That's the one I thought you meant, yeah.
Yeah, different. Yeah. But it does happen different times, but mostly in the ones, in my experience, and just my limited sample of these ones with the crescents, the curves, the nestedness, the kind of fractal type of design seems to do it a little more than others.
Right.
This one had a series of phi ratios embedded in it. So anyway, it's a good question. Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't completely have the answer.
Okay, GBZ is saying, does the size of the circle affect the static charge? The size?
It seems that small ones can do that too, but the one we did in Kansas, there was a thunderstorm approaching. We could see the lightning out there, and we got readings up in 2,000 volts. So it must have had something to do with static coming into the field from lightning. It does seem that these bigger ones do seem to create more of a... It's a kind of a change in the gradient. Normally, if you're down in the wheat, it's slowly going from 0 up, and when you go in some of these formations, it's already up at 100, 200 volts at waist level. So it's just it's almost like the shape of the energy field. Yeah, the formation has shifted it. It's a subtle effect, but it's enough apparently to create some changes, if that's what it is. Or we could be, maybe the static is just something tangential. It's just a correlation. It's not the cause. We don't know.
Getting some good questions. Bookman has said, could circles be working the same way as a coil, hence amplifying energy?
Yeah, good.
Like a transformer.
Very interesting. Yeah. Something like that. It's amplifying it. This is what we think about. Good question. Is it generating energy or is it transforming energy? You know, is it
Yeah.
actually a generator?
Or both.
Or both?
Yeah.
Is it like a coil? It's amping it up, just like, you know, something like that. Something like that.
And GBC says, are the circles acting as an orgone tube?
Well, it's a good metaphor for it. If they are, I haven't actually, you know, measured if it's that type of energy myself, but it's something like that. You know, people go in and they feel giddy. Some of them,
Yeah.
they go in and don't feel quite as good. You know, sometimes they don't feel quite the same way. So there's different effects of these formations in terms of how you feel.
And that seems to have really, I think, from my experience, come down to the people as well, because people do say to me, you know, oh, I don't like that circle up there because we were feeling really ill. And I say, well, you want to speak to some other people because you might find that other people felt really charged, but you might have felt ill. So it might be something that connects with your type of energy that made you feel ill on this particular time. But other people might feel, you know, it's whether you connect with that circle as well, you know, what you feel, maybe what you bring into it when your mood, you know, what your state of mind is, and then it maybe that gets amplified, or maybe, you know, you're actually feeling something because you resonate in a certain way with that circle. And some people don't like certain circles and some people love them.
No, true,
you know?
true.
But you can get two sets of people going to the same formation. One will feel ill, one will feel great, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Can we,
yes.
I think there is a level of intention of the circle makers and people go in. It's all part of the equation. Maybe we could look at another one of the videos.
Videos, yeah.
Just pick any of them.
Camera malfunction in East.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. Is an Australian tourist comes in.
And has it ever done that before?
No, I've taken 900 photos on it. This big video, it's taken about 100.
A little bit of wind there.
And what do you think's causing that?
I've got no idea, but when I get it, it's probably because I'm going to catch a plane.
So he's just
there we
walking
go.
in, and he says, you know, it just stops. 900 photos. Again, you know, cameras break. Why are these all breaking in crop circles? No one's ever had this experience of it happening anywhere else.
Yeah.
Just stops, you know, completely. Then they go home. Sometimes it works again. Sometimes it doesn't. We had an example. Someone just 2 days ago at East Kennet, 2 or 3 days ago, someone on one of our tours, maybe we could bring that one up.
That one was the one at East. It says camera malfunction at East Kennet, and this is a camera malfunction at West something.
Yeah, let's go a little further. The next one, East. It was one of the
East
first
Kennet, yeah. This one, perhaps.
Yeah. So, you know, someone we have on our tour, and we're going into East Kennet, and brand new Nike Canon camera, Canon Rebel EOS T2
Oh, about 50
T2i.
yards from the crop circle, my camera was working perfectly, which, by the way, is a brand new, very expensive camera. And now, upon entering
Just
the
stops
crop
focusing.
circle,
I looked through it and just would not focus anymore. 2 steps, you know, focus, take it.
Has it
Focus
ever done
steps,
this
not doing
before?
anything.
never ever.
Then she says, I think it's shot. It actually, for a while, it wouldn't even turn on. Then it turns on again. A couple hours later, these are all on YouTube, by the way, if people want to see them.
Right, okay.
I just searched for crop circle camera malfunction camera. It worked again a couple hours later. Let's look at this one.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, can you tell me about what happened with your compass here?
Well, I have a digital compass, a Casio Pathfinder, which is an altimeter digital readout compass. Anyway, it's lost its calibration after I was out in the crop circle. I came back and it's, you know, I turn 90 degrees, I get a 180 degree reading. In other words, it shows north over here and south over here,
So
which
he's
would
saying,
be at 90 degrees
90
to each
degrees
other.
apart.
Something's happened to it.
Has it ever done that before?
No.
So,
Thanks.
Okay.
so here's an example of the magnetic field being changed so that it's not. Now, we were in the Ridgeway Formation. This is in 2008. 2008?
Sure.
Ridgeway Formation. This is an electrical engineer. His electrical compass in his watch is now pointing the wrong way and is 90 degrees apart. North and south are usually 180 degrees apart in any compass I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So we're talking about more than, you know, static here. Or is the static affecting it? I think it's more than that, just from all of the effects. But let's pull up another one. We're in the Lockeridge Formation, and my focusing goes out.
Is this the one at camera
yeah.
malfunction at West?
Yeah, now look at this. This is about a minute long here. Now he's using the static meter there to measure the static, and the focusing is just gone. I'm the one filming it. Just blurring in and out.
distortion in the camera.
I know somebody who was
It's not
Miles
focusing
who
properly.
swears blind.
Look at that.
I mean, he's a Sky Television engineer who fixes broadcast
happening to the
cameras
camera?
and fixes video recorders and things like that.
No, batteries
Proper
are
electronics
fresh.
engineer, you know,
It's
at a
blurring in and out.
broadcast level.
It's never done this before.
And he's got his
Here, take a look
cameras
at this.
never seem
It's
to
blurring
survive.
in and out.
You know, when he's
that?
doing things around
it's on its
spirits
own.
and energies and going into crop circles, his
knows? I
cameras
wanna-
blow up on a regular basis.
That's-
You know, this
How's-
guy's got
how's
some
your,
really bad luck when it comes to cameras, and he doesn't
how's
abuse
your
them, but they just don't seem to last.
compass
you know?
working,
And he
Dan?
talks
Good.
about this focusing
yeah,
thing
it's
that he's
just right.
having.
It's not
He reckons there's something infrared is killing the circuitry. Something not in the visible spectrum is sort of damaging the circuitry. That's what he says.
We had an electrical engineer with us on the tour just last week, and he said the focusing mechanism uses an electromagnetic signal, which it sends out, and then looks how long it takes to come back. So something has to be interfering with the way that signal is propagated back to the camera.
I'm getting some distortion in the
Somebody's
camera.
saying that it's very
It's
loud
not
audio
focusing
here, so
properly. Look at
I'll
that.
try and turn that down so you can hear, because apparently it was so loud, the wind noise,
sorry.
they couldn't hear
This
us
is
properly.
taken with a regular camera of the video, so it
It's
doesn't
blurring
have
in
the
and
wind
out.
protector
It's
there.
never done this
Yeah.
before.
So
Here, take a
let's
look
see,
at
there's one more. I
It's
think
blurring in
we've
and
seen
out.
all of them.
We got the GPS batteries fail. We've
that
done
was
that one.
that was in Devil's Den.
We've done the compass.
Yeah,
We've done
so
west.
those
We've done
are the-
east.
just,
And we've done the other
just
east.
examples of what we've
How's
seen.
your,
Now this is interesting.
How's your
We had someone from Switzerland just a
compass
couple
working?
days ago,
Dan,
and
good.
she swore to us that she had a time change in her cell phone after being in the circle. It was reading one day later than it should. And I have a picture. It's one day past of the date. She said it was matched. Now it's a cell phone from Switzerland. It should work with the systems here, interface perfectly. And yet she says that it didn't show the right date anymore. And
Right.
that her watch was affected a little bit too, even though we didn't get to document that, as well as we would have liked to. But we have all these cases year after year of these sort of really weird effects that I've never encountered someone who says, this happens to me all the time. This happens on the beach, or it happens when I'm by a lake. It's always only
blurring in
in
and out?
a crop formation.
See that?
Right. Well, very interesting stuff. Now, I did say I'd ask Sonia's question earlier on. If I can ask this one very quickly, and then we'll go for the break. Is that cool?
Yeah, and when we come back from the break, I'll show you some more interesting examples that go way beyond the static into other types of energy.
Okay, cool. Well, let's have a look. What do we got here? Sonia's question. Where have I got it? I've got to find where. Oh, hang on then. Sorry about this. Shit. It's something to do with Simeon. Is it possible that humans affect the reading? Yes, this is it. Is it possible that humans affect the reading, their vibrations, how they view the circle they are in? So, basically people's own vibration when they go into a formation, are they affecting the readings? So basically, I suppose that means that are you using double blinds? Because, maybe a certain person might affect the equipment in a certain way because they think a certain way about the way they've been, the intention. It's kind of like, are you double blinding this stuff? I mean, one day, I suppose, if, we're given enough time and resources, you'd like to double blind this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, no, good question, and we can't discount that possibility. Because we haven't done a double blind because, we're going in there with our tour groups and, with the resource we've got, and this stuff happens. We can't conclusively say it's the formation and not the excitement level of the person. But, I've never seen someone's excitement level affect their compass before. But, I like that. When you attend, conferences, and we're looking at these side effects, even the fact that Matt was talking about at the beginning with the chicks, that was done at Princeton Engineering Anomalies Lab. We had Roger Nelson from there out here a couple of years ago, by the way, with his random event generator. And we went into one near Avebury, so forth. Anyway, they control for this sort of thing. They will do it, as Matt's saying, double blind, so that no one knows exactly which is the experiment, which is the... And that's the way to do it. One way to do it, to see if the person themselves is creating the effect from the... And we can't discount that because, we're just experiencing it. However, having said that, I usually go into these formations with the same level of expectation I think most people on our tour do. We don't expect this to happen ahead of time. It's not like we're saying, is it going to happen? It just, all of a sudden it just happens. So they're kind of at the same level of excitement in each formation, and we don't see it happening in every formation. But good question, and definitely something to consider in the whole interaction scheme here.
I think Sonia's kind of suggesting I might have got the perception of the question wrong. She says, Matt, the who were they question was in regards to Simeon meeting the couple that made the circles. Ah, so this was, you met a couple in the States, wasn't it? Or was it in the States? No, at Cricklade. At Cricklade, you met a couple and they said, yeah, we've made circles and now we know they're all man-made. So I think she was talking in relation to that. So I think she's saying, Simeon, is it possible that humans affect the reading their vibrations, how they view the circle they are in? And she's kind of talking about the couple that made the circles. Does that make sense? Doesn't quite make sense to me, but okay.
They didn't. This person didn't mention to me any of those sort of effects what they are experiencing. But I mean, overall, the question is definitely we interact with them, and is something of our interaction creating some of these effects, and it's certainly good question to put in the mix.
Okay, well, we'll go for this break now where Simeon can get some comfort and pop off and do things that people do in comfort breaks. But what we'll do is we'll come back in a couple of minutes and I will let you ask some more questions. We'll go into some other areas. We've certainly got a lot more to cover, I'm sure. But what we'll do at the moment is we'll talk to you a little bit about something that happened last night. And this is, so if you need to pop off, that's fine. We've faded your mic out so you're safe now. We had this thing, an auction, which some of you are aware of from the Facebook channel and also CircleMakers TV, and we email some people. And this auction was for CircleMaker diagrams. So the CircleMaker diagrams went up for sale from myself anyway, and there were a couple which were donated at the last minute as well from other CircleMakers. Now, all the diagrams that I put up there are things that I made. I wasn't able to put up diagrams for auction for things that I worked in collaboration with other teams, which, to be honest, are some of the more famous and massive circles that I would have loved to have put up there, but it would have had to have been with agreement of the people that designed them and the teams that kind of organised it, and I was just a team member, not a team organiser or designer. But nonetheless, we actually put these up for auction, my designs, and we did it for charity, and it was for the Sea Shepherd organisation, which you've probably seen the logo up. Sometimes I put the logo up in the corner of the screen, the Sea Shepherd logo. Let me see if I can get it up, and misses. Let's see if I can. Oh, here we go. If I bring it up like this, and I press this button, this is the Sea Shepherd organisation, and they basically have a problem at the moment whereby they're, and I'm going to flick through whilst we're talking. These are the designs, by the way. So basically, I'll flick through them very quickly. These are the ones that were up for sale. Sea Shepherd they've had it impounded, their boat, the Steve Irwin. And the Steve Irwin is their main flagship boat. They needed to get $1.5 million, which is about £1 million, to get this out of the British court system. It was seized in the Shetland Islands at a particularly important moment where they were going to try and stop a nasty thing called the Grind, which is in the Faroe Islands, which is just off France, sort of southeast England on the other side of the channel. It's a French island, but I think it's owned by the Norwegians, I believe, and they do this horrible stuff of hacking up the whales on the beach and not even really using the meat for anything, just hacking it up. And you bring out your kids with a knife or a bludgeon, and you pen in these poor little whales, and you just bludgeon them to death because it's great fun. It's like Norway's answer to fox hunting. So basically we auctioned off these designs, and we surprisingly, with the designs and a stomper board which was signed, and a piece of artwork that was donated by one of the circle makers, and a couple of his designs as well, raised £620 for Sea Shepherd. So it was absolutely brilliant that we managed to get that money for the Sea Shepherd organisation, and it may go a long way if lots of other people are pulling their fingers out to actually getting their boat back for them as soon as possible so that they can go on and stop the horror of this thing called the Grind. So these are the designs that you're seeing going here now. And basically, if you want to have a look at the designs proper and you want to study them at any great length, I've uploaded them onto the CircleMakers TV website. So you can go and download them. They're in the photos and links section, and download the zip file. And there are some low resolution versions there, which it's only a 3.2 meg file. There's about 110 10 or something like that pictures of the designs. If you need them in high res, I can upload high res versions or send them to you, email them to you if you want a high res version. But there we go, £620. I think that's a big success. Going for charity for Sea Shepherd from the Circle Makers, and there were about 30 people who attended, and it was a good vibe, a good evening, and we've actually got some footage. I should show you the footage. Why not show you the footage so you can pretend like you're there rather than me talking about it? This is the footage of us auctioning stuff at the Wilcott Village Hall. So here we go. Oh, is it not playing? Is it not rewound? Let me just see what's going on here. Play media when it becomes live. Yes, press button. In the middle, anybody for £4? Anybody for 4? It's going for 3. Going for 3. We have £4 on the middle. Do you want £5? We'll go 5 at the back. 5. 5 it's going for. Going. On at the back. Thank you very much.
£5, number 26.
Okay, number 26. Okay, this is experimental in pencil, 45. Experimental in pencil, £1. £1, anybody? 50 pence. 50 pence, anybody?
I'll do £1.
I do £1, okay. £1 we go. £1. Sounds like it could be going for £1. Anybody? 150. 150. We have. Any advances on that? Anybody for £2? It's going for one. We've got £2. Going for 2. £2.50. £2.50. Going £3. Going 3. £3.50. At the back. £3.50. Going for £3.50. Going. Oh, right.
That's a very good cause.
£3.50.
Yeah.
Number 26.
Number 26. Thank you. Right. This is 8 pages on 46. It's a multi-pack. 46 multi-pack. Thank you. This actually appeared, but not with the addition you see on the edge. It didn't have its satellite. So this one, the satellite was removed, but you can see different ideas for what could be happening with the satellite on the edge. But it ended up as pretty much that there, which is, as you can see, the staples are in it, and it's a flip chart then. It was a flip chart for the diagram to be done in the field. So you've got all of those bits there, 8 pages. So anybody start me on £1 for that? £1 we have. £2 anybody? £2 for anybody? £2 we have. £2, anybody? 8 pages. £1.20. £2.25. £2.25. You nearly had me then. Yeah, £2.25. £2.50. £2.50. Right, we'll show you a different piece of footage. I think is the sale of
Should we say £3.50? Yes, it was all finished.
I got arrested for this one, the 7-hole star.
The measurements are in this as well, along with the alignment north.
This went for a little bit more money because it's quite a famous one, because it's the one I got arrested for.
You can actually see the 7-fold in this
there was the basket
extended
weave, which
version.
was sold for about £26.
Whether there was anything extra
quite
that
good.
would be deduced by
We had the
somebody
stomper
else
board, which
from
went
the
for
pattern.
£90, which was signed by the Circle
It's a
Makers.
7-fold, but as you see, it's got the extra little bits of patterning in the middle. So that was taken out and used. Anybody give me a £5? Sorry, thank you. That's why I stopped, because of the hay fever. Anybody want to give me a £5 for that? Yes, we got a £5. £6. Part of history, this one. The only person to be arrested, I believe, on the planet for making crop circles, Memoir. That's the one that did it. £10, £10, £11, £12. Do we have a 14? £14, anybody? 12, £13, anyone? £13 at the back. £14, anybody? £14 for a piece of history, and it comes in how many parts? 7 pages.
7 parts, so we've got
15. 7 pages. Okay, there are measurements on there and developmental ideas. £15. It's going to go once.
50.
£15.50. Yeah. Okay, £15.50.
Not here, look.
Good bit of fun there.
Can you take it outside? Right. Okay. 16. £16. Right, we still got it open. £16.
I'll do the 18 then.
18. This lady is serious. She doesn't mess about. £18, I feel it
20
going.
quid and drop the hatch.
Ah! Everybody likes a challenge. £20.
21.
21. Got her on the run. 21.
Learned a few techniques about
21,
getting
anybody
the
for
prices
22?
going. You say, oh yes, you're challenging, so you're being challenged. And everybody's like, no, I'm not going to let this go now.
Piece of trash
You can also say, this is for the whales, and then everybody goes, right, bid.
£25.
few techniques we learned there last night.
A little bit more to go, but to be honest, this is for the whales.
Was that West Overton?
That was at West Overton, yes. Yeah. So anybody 25, 21? 21.
22.
22. 22 over here. Anybody 23? 23, magical number. 22 to this lady here.
No, 22 to the gentleman over there.
22 to the gentleman, sorry. Go on. Thank you very much.
There we go, £22 for the
May it bring you as much luck as it brought
item.
me.
Excellent. So as you can see, we had a good bit of fun there doing that last night. And basically, as we say, we raised 620 for Sea Shepherd, which I'm going to put the receipt when I get it, because I've got to get a few more payments in. Once we've got the whole money, it gets paid off my card, get the receipt from Sea Shepherd, and I will show it on the site to prove that we've paid that in. So excellent. So back across to our guest Simeon, and hope you're feeling suitably refreshed now.
Yes, we're ready to go. We are all topped up here.
Yeah, we got it's a long old show this, but there we are. You see, we're now at 10 o'clock. And I bet you feel like you're just getting going. You see?
Yeah, we're just.
This is what I say to people. I say, look, 2 hours sounds like a long time. 2 hours is gone, and you you've got more to say. There you go. And I think the channel is very much behind you. So yes, give us some more magic.
Yes,
sir.
let's take a look at this shot on the screen now. This is Vernon Dean. Fosbury, I believe.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, last year, right? Everyone remembers this formation. This is a wonderful.
Okay. Do you have a zoom in of that? But I can see what it is. A square, three-dimensional square.
Yeah. Hexagonal, three-dimensional square. And, I was doing this kind of standing meditation. Anyone who's taking any Tai Chi, anything knows that this type of accumulate little energy. There was a helicopter above. I thought, wouldn't it be neat to draw some energy into the circle while there's a helicopter taking pictures? Maybe we can create an event for the helicopter. And lo and behold, this ball of light crossed through the formation. I'll have a close-up of it in a second. There was a Finnish circle researcher. Right, there you've got it up on the screen. There was a Finnish circle researcher, and he was taking video at the same time I'm there doing that standing meditation. And he recorded a ball of light coming in from outside the formation and going right past me. I'm talking like within 2 or 3 feet of me. So you can see it there, right?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see it on the
Yeah, so it comes in there, and then it goes, I'm there in the middle. He just happens to get me there, and it goes right across until it's, see right there. Now, I was talking with someone who was there in the corner, one of the crop circle connector guys. They remember seeing some sort of flash. And while I don't consciously remember a ball of light passing me, I remember for some reason looking over to the left as if something was flashed, something was there. I looked over to the left, it's already gone. So here the video camera captures it. Now here again, we have what I believe to be a man-made formation attracting balls of light. It isn't to me now that the balls of light create the formation. I mean, like many others, I think that one at Oliver's Castle, really was made by Waby, John Waby. I really believe he made that in his animation studio. But I think it's quite possible that crop formations, all types, attract balls of light for reasons unknown. But here's an example of it.
Okay.
What these are, I don't know, but they've been seen also around experimental aircraft, space shuttle. Remember the Concorde footage of that little thing. So we don't know what these balls of light are, but they seem to be, they can turn on sharp angles, almost like they're intelligently controlled. Maybe they're a life form. Maybe there's something else. I'm not sure, but we've seen them, and there's one just from last year.
Yeah.
Here's another one just quickly. We were out doing a meditation with Coke and Kyborg several years ago, and this showed up. This little light, another of their friends was on Knapp Hill taking a shot of it. I mean, there is a ball of light. He saw this with his eye and took a picture. What it is, I don't know. But there it is over the Eastfield. So these things are real. There's better video, that shows this, the Steve Alexander video and so forth, I believe from 1990, was it?
Right,
91?
yes, indeed.
Yeah, so they seem to be attracted to formations and another part of the mystery.
Have you actually seen my triangular footage of some balls of light above Adam's grave? It almost looks like a triangle of lights, balls of light, and I don't. You haven't seen that?
I haven't seen
I should show that to you. It might be interesting because it's more than one. We've been chased out of fields by balls of light. I think that most circle makers and researchers would agree that these things are in the area. Whether or not it's heightened because it's the area, or whether or not it's more people are out at night, or more people are looking for this type of stuff and reporting it, even because maybe people see this stuff and don't report it in other places. But in Wiltshire, there's the network of people to talk to about this sort of stuff. So you end up getting the information that this stuff is out there. And again, I'm kind of drawn to ask the question, which somebody actually, here we are, Bookman, he puts it very well. Let me just, you've got Donald something, his name
Fletcher.
was. Donald Fletcher, there we are, Donald Fletcher's footage. I love this footage, I think it was great.
Very interesting, turns at almost real sharp angle, goes up to about 200 miles an hour. If you measure the distance it covered in just a few seconds.
Yeah, sure.
And then just disappears in the middle of right over that science museum, right? That old air hangar.
Oh, yes, Rawton.
Yes, exactly, Rawton. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes from Barbary Castle to Rawton in like 2 seconds flat. They're not that
Yeah.
far apart, but that thing was really booking at the
Yeah,
end if you
yeah.
look at the video. Yeah.
Bombing along, yes. Well, Bookman here asks the question, which I think follows on from this, and he says, Simeon, do you believe that the ancients could tap into this energy, i.e. Stonehenge circles, spirals, etc.? I mean, what we're sort of chatting about then is, is it the area, and would the ancients be tapping into this energy, and is this something to do with what we're seeing? We're seeing balls of light, we're seeing strange energy effects. Could it be something that's in this area? With the ancients maybe tapping into this stuff with Stonehenge?
It might go clear back to Atlantis,
Right.
with another civilization. We like to think that we're the most advanced thing that the planet has produced, right? I think every civilization believes this.
Yeah.
It's our ego mind that thinks we're the most sophisticated thing around. But how do we know that peoples in the past weren't able to tap into things that we've forgotten about, right? And, we have all these gadgets and machines, but maybe they knew how to tap directly into the energies of the earth and create these big monuments and pyramids. These pyramids are all over the planet, by the way. I mean, how did people know how to do that back then and make them with such fascinating precision? You can't even stick a knife in between the stones. It's a level of precision I don't even think buildings can be built with now, down less than an inch. All the way around of perfect, mathematical precision. So
Yes,
it's definitely
yes.
a good question, and it just makes you wonder whether we're rediscovering some of this knowledge through the formations, just coming out through our subconscious. I'm not even convinced that necessarily people have to consciously know what they're doing when they go out to make a formation for it to create the effect. I can tell you from teaching many people remote viewing that they do their best remote viewing work when they don't know what they're doing. When
Yes.
they feel most confused, they often get the best target contact when the conscious mind's out of the way. So I think sometimes the patterns may come from even a deeper source than the conscious mind of the circle maker. And if you talk to some of them, they're not always certain where these patterns come from, but they see them, they emerge from somewhere, they seem like a good fit into the landscape. And some of these circle makers have told me that they're very careful where they place the circles. They don't just put them any old place, and they locate them very carefully in the feng shui, the lay of the land, the ley lines, and then the intention they put into it, right? I think, Matt, you called it natural magic, and you say, intentions and things.
We do the orations beforehand.
Yes.
Yes.
So
and sometimes you walk into a field, you might have stuck it somewhere, say, well, we need it in this area. But when you walk into a field, you kind of feel that this is the right place. You feel it. It's like, this feels like the right place. We do it here. Then somebody takes a photo, an aerial shot, and you notice that you've stuck it on something underneath the ground, that there's a marking in the ground, like a pattern or some sort of underwater watermarks or something like that, and you just felt that was the place you were meant to stick it. And also that you may be sticking it on somewhere where a crop circle appeared last year and it wasn't your crop circle, but somebody else has stuck the crop circle the previous year in exactly the same position. And how do the circle makers at night know just by walking into a field? We don't count, well, sometimes you count the amount of tram lines, but you can count 5 tram lines across, but how do you know how many steps to walk in? You see, counting the tram lines is one method, but you're not going to know how many steps to walk in. That is something that you do when you're actually there and you feel it's the right moment to stop. So it's, these sorts of questions don't get talked about a lot in the public, but they certainly get talked about a lot amongst circle makers. So very interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good point. There's a kind of intuitive component about it, but our intuition is often very accurate.
Yes.
Very accurate.
Yes, and ley lines and things like that. You know, the types of spiral energies and water energies that get picked up. You know, it's an interesting thing.
Let me show you something else here that's interesting. Well, let's take a look at this one really quick.
Sure.
This is one where we had, we were commissioned to make this one.
Yeah.
And we called it the Math Matrix.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, we hired a circle maker to help us because we really didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
And some of the swirls that he made here seemed to affect cameras. Not the numbers that we made. I helped make those. They didn't seem to have any energy, any effect on the static meter or anything. But
when you say swirls, wiggle your mouse around where you're talking about here.
Yeah, kind of the 9 swirls on the outside.
Oh, I see.
They're kind of double tufted here.
I got you, yeah.
Now, at the end of this, people didn't believe we made it because it looked pretty good. And this person had obviously was very good at what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so people didn't believe that we actually could do this. But I helped with the numbers parts and some of the outside swirls. And the farmer was paid for this. We even put a sign up saying, this is man-made, and people still, it was filmed, and people said, no human can make these.
Yeah.
Someone came in and asked me, if you made this, how could you explain why some of the wheat is facing this way and some is facing that way? And I said, I don't understand it any more than how my hybrid car could work or something, the way it charges and discharges, but I can still drive it. But they said, no, I don't believe you. You can't explain it, and I don't think you made it. And that was their conclusion, which is fine. But we did find that some of those swirls, affected it. Now, let's look at one other effect that's interesting. That has to do with people's beliefs. Well, this is really fascinating. This is from Colin Andrews, and he did give us permission to use this. This is from the so-called Milton Hill Farms formation of 2000, right? He did a magnetometer study with Jean-Noël Aubron, if my French is right. Now, this is a very good engineer who now works for NASA. They took a magnetometer. We actually located people who made this, so we know it was man-made. At the time Colin took the magnetometer survey, he didn't know.
Right.
Now look at this. The magnetic field pattern seems to match the circles roughly, but not entirely. You notice there's some drift, especially in this one in the upper right-hand corner. But it's a significant change in, I think it's this milligauss or something, from 15 all the way up to 20, 23, 24 in the formation, even higher. You can see there's some white zones here. So this is an apparent case of the shape of the wheat affecting the magnetic distribution.
I think that was one of the ones I made.
Oh, okay. Well, now we know some of the...
But I think you asked me about this before. I remember some time ago, but I did tell you,
So this is one where we have a magnetic effect from just the pattern itself.
Had unusual, what we termed as swastika lay, because it was the lay went in 4 different directions in those circles.
Right. So we don't know why this happens exactly, but it's something to do with the lay pattern and the shape. And Colin at the time thought that this must be an effect of magnets buried in the ground. That's the only explanation he could have at the time. Not regular kitchen magnets on your refrigerator. I mean, really strong magnets. But to best of my knowledge, there's no magnets buried there unless they were buried there before you got there.
No,
So
exactly. No, there wasn't anything by us.
Yeah. So it's another example of, a crop pattern creating an energetic effect that you never would have expected, would you? But there it is.
Indeed.
So fascinating stuff, just fascinating. And again, it has something to do with the shape. I often think of it having to do it's like a liquid crystal in the field. You could show a picture of this if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Just one line of reasoning is that just like you have pixels in a liquid crystal display, you could think of each stalk of wheat as a grain, a crystal grain, and it would suggest that the wheat field itself, Matt, it's not a solid and it's not a liquid. It's somewhere between a solid and a liquid because it's movable. You can move the wheat around. It's a solid substance, but over a large area it acts like a liquid, which means it's another state of matter between solid and liquid, which puts it into the categories of being now this is not a crop circle, this is a CD circle on Walker Hill. Still look for, this is a type of liquid crystal, by the way, the shape, columnar liquid crystal. But it's just another way to look at it. I don't know if it completely explains it, but it shows you the idea that it's another phase of matter, and liquid crystals have very interesting magnetic and electronic properties, which allow us to have all this amazing technology we have nowadays, which is allowing us to see this show right now. And it's one possibility is that crop circles are a type of crystal that we haven't completely understood the physics of, or it's acting like that.
Yes.
Yeah, just another way to look at it.
Very interesting. Yes, there's somebody's mentioned that the Faroe Islands are to the northeast of Scotland. I think I looked for them, and I thought I saw it off the France, but there we are. I'm probably making a boo-boo there, but you're probably right. They are up in the northeast of Scotland. Right then, have we got any questions in the channel? I'm not seeing any new ones. Oh, hang on. Sonia says, my camera broke at West Kennet this year, as well as someone else's they were with. So 2 people had their camera break in West Kennet this year.
Interesting.
So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So the West Kennet one, we're talking about that simple circle near the Long Barrow, right?
West Kennet Long Barrow, yeah. And it's a set of rings, isn't it? Yes.
Set of rings. Yeah. Now, if the other one, I'll show people if they're wondering which one it was that. Hold on a second. It was this one.
Okay, you got him up on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, there
now,
you
this
go.
is the one that affected. It didn't only affect the camera. We showed that the woman with the focusing mechanism that went wrong. It was also my little phone, which has a camera in it, like a lot of cell phones. The first video I took of her explaining what had happened.
Yes.
I tried to replay it, and the camera said unrecognized format.
Whoa.
Now, again, it's never done that before. It's the phone's own format, and there it is. Something about this pattern affected her device, and then my device. I was able to, take another video, and then it worked. So anyway, that's the one we were talking about before. I think, Matt, you have the other one up. That is the so-called
Yes,
West
I can show you the West Kennet one. That's the rings at West Kennet Long Barrow, which is probably off to the top right in this picture. And it's receiving a lot of visitors because it's visible from the road, from Silbury Hill. If you drive along the road, you can't miss it. So if you take your cameras in there at your own risk, sounds like you could end up with a dead camera. Take a cheap one in.
Can this person tell us, did their camera come back, or did it?
Yeah.
2 cameras affected. What happened? Can they tell us more?
She's just said that's where my camera broke, so I think she's listening in. So can you tell us if that...
did it come back? Or?
Did it come back after you left the formation, or is it proper gone? She'll respond now in a second. It's a 10-second delay between our transmission, and then it did after 10 minutes, she says. Yes. So there you go. Very interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I've never had any equipment die on me. But then again, I kind of pride myself as well in saying that I kind of know that my equipment isn't damp and all this. But now I'll probably get equipment die on me. But I think it does help, making sure that your equipment hasn't been left in a hot car, hasn't been left in a cold car, hasn't been left in a moist situation. And
did she respond there? I think
she says that's where my camera did. It did come back after 10 minutes. It's in a tram outside. So I think she's... are you saying that it died in a tram or it came back in a tram line outside? Anyway, we'll find out in 10 seconds when the delay gives a question. But
I will... there's another one where we were told by the National Geographic that they're...
She says after she left the circle, it came back. So you're saying National Geographic, yes? Sorry to break into your thing.
Hold on, let me find it. We did some filming with them last year. They didn't use it in that show that they produced, unfortunately, but we had a very interesting story from them, which is that when they were in the Mayan Formation 2009 up in Silbury?
Right.
That what they told us was first their new camera battery completely drained. They put a new battery in, and then the whole camera locked up so badly they had to call headquarters back in London for instructions. That's it. Instructions how to reboot the camera. I mean, this is a very expensive, sophisticated, software-driven, well, hardware-driven camera. It has to be booted up.
Oh, right.
And they couldn't get it to work again after entering this formation. Same sort of, we've been hearing this for years. So this is National Geographic film crew says that they're same sort of camera malfunction. It's the same sort of thing we see and hear about again and again. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of it going on. So Sonia says after she left the circle, then it came back. So it didn't work inside the circle. I mean, I hear stories about people saying that they can't, their horses won't enter a circle and things like this. And I mean, I've heard stories about pilots saying that they've had flutters in their engines going over a crop circle. But I've also heard some pilots admitting to me that they've kind of done this to wind up their passengers a little bit too, because they know that they're flying over a crop circle and then they go, they blip the engine. They've sort of like secretly got their hand on the throttle and they sort of like blip it up and down and they go, oh, look, the engine went funny. And everybody goes, oh. I've actually had some admissions from a pilot that he's done that to people. So...
Well, this is the thing. We had that happen at the mathematical matrix, which we showed pictures of. Let's put it on the screen again.
Right. This is your monitor.
Now, we had Ron flying this one with his camera and mine.
Right.
Right? And my Olympus camera jammed up over the formation, and it started flashing numbers in the little display. We had to take the batteries out and put them back in to get it to work. When I later went home to look at the manual, if that had been some sort of error message, it wasn't in the manual. I mean, it just, he reports right when they were over it, this one, and they're looking down at it,
yes,
malfunction. So if that's true, it wouldn't be, again, assuming it's just not some random fluctuation. If it was connected to the circle, it wouldn't be static or anything like that. It's just something like an energy field around there. So anyway, Matt, it's just interesting. So some of the pilots said they added a little woo in there, but again, we have some cases, Ron's a reliable witness where we seem to have had that happen, again, in the air to a camera, not the engine, hopefully, the camera.
Right. Okay, well, are you intending on doing any more scientific research? I know you've been out there this year. Is there anything planned for the future that, sort of will take this further? Because I know you come over here with groups of people now who are interested in helping with the research and coming to visit the crop circles as well. But I mean, what have you got planned for the future?
Well, we just really enjoy taking people out to see this for the first time. It's always quite a thrill. And if we had some other types of equipment, we might be able to measure different types of frequencies, the idea of resonance that you mentioned. So, something like a laser interferometer, which can see small changes in light, bandwidth of light. If you set that up across a formation, it'd be quite an affair to do it, and it might take some time, but you could get a measure if the light frequencies or something about the reflected sunlight is being affected by the formation in an interesting way, if it's modulating the light in a way that is not happening outside the field. Going along the line of kind of like a photonic crystal, people I think have seen this kind of invisibility clothing, where it's from Japan, where you kind of see right through the person if they're wearing the coat or the pants or something like that. It's a type of cloth, and it has these crystals embedded in it. It bends the light, and it makes the person invisible. Well, it's the same way. Some of these formations, because of their shape, could...
I haven't seen it, but I certainly want to now.
Well, take a look for it. Invisibility clothing.
Or can I see it? That's the thing. Can I see it?
Well, it's obviously, it has different applications. I believe the military is interested in it for, obviously, disguising weapons. That tank is not there. It's invisible. But it's the idea that shapes can bend light and affect light. And I've often wondered whether there's some effect on light that we haven't captured with any of our equipment so far. All of this, realize we're going down to farmers' fields who, may not want us to be out there all day. We put our pound or two into the honesty box and so forth, but we're not really dealing with our own property. The way to really do this would be to buy some land or rent some land, grow your own crop, create different patterns and shapes in there from different teams of circle makers, something like that. It's an experiment, and see, do you get anything happening, and could we find out what shapes do it and why, or times of year, moisture levels, all sorts of things. Or is it something just, one thing we have to possibly accept is this is beyond any of our comprehension. It's beyond even what we're talking about here. We all like to put things in boxes, myself included, right? But these crop circles, to me, and I think this is an important point, I think you'll agree, Matt, they don't quite fit. If you think they're all man-made, there's some that aren't. I get people writing on my YouTube channel, you idiot, I'm out there in Wiltshire, I've made these, and they're all man-made, and that's it. There's nothing going on. Yet we still have these weird effects and so forth. And for the people that think, they're all made by ET, I've got some people I'd like you to meet. So it's somewhere in the middle, and it's very hard for a lot of our brains to accept the complexity of it, which is that it's kind of like a blend. And you have different sources, different circles being made by different forces. Obviously, during some decades, it's more one than the other. But I think it doesn't really fit easily into a box, and we necessarily shouldn't try to make it fit. I think one day maybe we'll understand it when we're ready, but not to really force it into a box one way or another, because it doesn't really seem to want to fit.
What do you think about, and Sonia is asking, what do you think is going on with the man-made circles? What are you suggesting? And I would say, well, here we are. She says, is there an interaction with something non-human? I'd add to that as well. What do you think about Doug and Dave? Because I think there was an admission made by Doug that he felt that, there was times he used to look back at what he was doing and why he was doing it. And he felt that maybe he was being guided to do it. He kind of thinks that now about when you look back at it all and things that have happened to him and strange things like being hit on the head by ice from an aircraft, which knocked him unconscious, and he's thinking, why me? Why me? Is it like is this some sort of cosmic joker at work that's playing tricks on him and using him, to kind of do work? I think circle makers kind of have wondered that themselves, is there something out there wanting human circle makers to do the work to spread the message for something else or somebody else or something out there?
Which one of them was from Australia?
Well, one of them went to live in Australia. That was Doug.
Okay, Doug, so let's show this screen for a second. These are the Tully saucer nests.
That's the original ones that set him off, yeah.
Now, this is what he was attempting to imitate. These were seen near flying discs. If you look at the history of this, people saw flying discs. Just like my friend near Usk, Washington. These things really happen. Read that book, The Secret History of Crop Circles by Terry Wilson. Good example of early witnesses to, discs, strange things for simple circles. Here's your original crop formations.
Yeah.
Tully in grass, where the discs are seen, right? The water level goes down a little bit, dries up some of the water apparently, and the reeds go up and they look like this. This is what Doug... is it Doug Bauer?
Doug Bauer, yeah.
This is what he sees. These are over a period of 5 or 6 years, repeatedly.
Sure.
We don't know who's in these craft, or even if this is intentional. We don't know what they are, but they leave these behind. So Doug sees this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but this is my understanding. He comes back here and says, Dave, Doug's an artist, right? So can we do this out in the countryside, recreate these saucer nests? These were called the Tully saucer nests. It all starts with UFOs. And then he comes back here and they do some of these, trying to recreate these very simple patterns. And lo and behold, they get a lot of media attention, which prompts them to keep doing it.
Yep.
But in the end of the BBC interview, I believe it was BBC, as you mentioned, Matt, Doug says, I believe, we always thought something else was making us do it.
Yeah.
And if you believe he just wasn't putting that in for fun and he meant it, it's kind of like, Sonia, what you're kind of hinting at. There's something bigger going on here. Whether it comes from a flying saucer or for a human, at least my belief, just my view of this, there's something bigger to the whole process that none of us may completely understand. And I think it's quite possible that this is an extraterrestrial language that's being taught to humans, and it would take a human to teach it to another human. In other words, it starts perhaps with these saucers, whether they're doing them intentionally or not, but it's almost like a language of shape that humans quite rightly have picked up on how to create and make and so forth. At least that's a view of it, and it's almost like a language we're learning, and perhaps these weird effects we're seeing on cameras and batteries shows us that we're getting closer to understanding the language of the shapes. It's like almost like a natural technology. And that's one interpretation, but that's one way you could look at it. It is an interaction at many levels between us and something else.
Right, okay. Well,
That's one way to look at it.
yeah, your remote viewing initially kind of didn't give you the sort of clear thing of it was humans, you were saying, because you hadn't kind of looked into what these beings that were making the circles were. You know, you kind of had drawings which were showing little beings making the circles, but you kind of think, well, they're beings, and you kind of get on with it, and you hadn't gone into great details like, well, what are these beings? You said you didn't go down that far down that road of asking that sort of question initially, but now that you kind of know that it's people making the circles, has your remote viewing changed in the way that you're perceiving things? Have you gone and remote viewed crop circles as targets? And what are you getting now? And how do you sort of reconcile that into your current view of what crop circles are?
Yeah, well, this whole thing has definitely been a humbling experience. I mean, it's been much more of a wild ride than I ever would have expected.
Sure.
And I'm sure for you too, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we first detected beings around the crop circles in the remote viewing sessions, because I had been told that no human could make these, I immediately jumped to the conclusion that must be ET there. But now looking back at them, those could easily have been the circle makers, and one of whom is sitting right here next to me. So it just shows you need to be a little cautious with your interpretation, and it may not be what you expect. And so, you'd want to probe some of that a little more and have your viewer say, okay, now that you've identified some intelligence there, we would just call it a biological, or maybe even a person. A person could be an ET too. You use very general terms in viewing because you don't want to collapse the conscious mind to draw a conclusion too soon. And you could have them probe and get some information. Having said that, even in that session, I did get extraterrestrial themes related to it. So again, that could be like an overlay of extraterrestrial energy, if that makes sense to anyone who's listening. I mean, I don't know what that means, but this is what the session I saw in a couple of the sessions, like a extraterrestrial feeling to it, with humans there too. It can be both. It doesn't have to be either or. That's the thing. It can be a kind of a blend. So yeah, it means you want to take a look at what you're getting and be open to all the possibilities. And certainly we have done these occasionally from time to time. I remember a particular session I gave this 97 Milk Hill formation, one of those Coke snowflake types. And I went out there into the field, and one of the people from Alton Barnes came out and said, we heard roaring sounds that night, very strange sounds in the sky, the night that it appeared. Now, back then in 97, I think, maybe it's the energy coming down from the sky. But now, I think that was a human-made circle. I think a pretty good idea which group might have done that based on some of their demonstrations for the BBC and so forth. But in any case, we gave that to a viewer, and she said, I'm getting these roaring sounds. Just like what the person from the village told me. Now, this is not double-blind. You could say, well, Simeon, it's your telepathic overlay. I can't disprove that. But she got all sorts of UFO-related stuff, and then kind of went into a panic attack in the middle of the session, and I pushed her through the session, and she finished it. And then what came out was this. That session had given her a flashback of some experiences as a child when she all of a sudden remembered that there had been a UFO outside the window, and her parents had become afraid, and they had said, don't look. It brought that experience back to her. So you see, again, it didn't matter who made it. It got her through a memory that was a little hard to deal with, that she had repressed of. She told me that this UFO made a clacking sound over the roof, and it would come back a couple times, and she was afraid of it. Now, here's the interesting thing. A couple days later, up in Estes Park, Colorado, we're in Boulder, she tells me she's driving down late at night in Estes Park, and there at the end of the street is a glowing green sphere the size of a VW bug. It's there for about 20 seconds because she timed it on the clock, and then it zips off just like UFOs do, and it just is gone. And what she told me was that viewing session of that Milk Hill formation somehow opened her up to that experience. That's what she believed. So see, that's how it's a blend. You see, it doesn't really matter. It's these folders we have in our mind. It has to be this or that. It's all. How about this and that and that and that? It could have been made by people, and it has an extraterrestrial theme, and someone viewing it blind gets this idea of UFOs, and they have an experience a week later for real. That's how it all works. She said she didn't think it would have happened without that, and helped her overcome the fear of the UFOs. She didn't feel afraid of them anymore after viewing the Milk Hill Formation. I'm sure the authors, whoever made that, didn't have that as their conscious intention, but that's the effect it had on her just viewing it later on.
Well, on this show, there was somebody that actually managed to draw the Milk Hill Formation, and we did say we're not drawing conclusions for people that it was a man-made circle, but certainly somebody came on the show and managed to draw it very quickly and on the show that we call Circle School, so you should maybe go and have a look at that. Sonia is asking, so Simeon, what comes next? I think we kind of asked this one already. It's like, where's your research going? But, you know, in a general sense, so Simeon, what comes next? Are you, or maybe even, are you a believer in 2012 and all this sort of stuff? Or, you know, where do you stand on things like that?
Well, the thing is, you know, we have crop circles and we have crop squares. And you don't want to become a crop square. Crop squares are people who have their mind made up exactly what's going on here. You know, what this has taught us is to be really open-minded and accept that you don't totally know what's going on. And you have to admit you don't, do you? It's a big universe. None of us, not myself, not Matt, really knows ultimately totally what's going on.
Yes.
So here's the thing. It really seems like our society is undergoing a shift right now, and the existing systems are really challenged and maybe even completely falling apart. And this might be a good thing because it's going to allow new systems to arise that are much more naturally based and kind of have a more harmonious connection with nature, so we don't have all these systems that just have to, kind of what Matt was talking about with the whales before, and we don't have to be destroying things to survive. We can coexist with everything here in a better way, and with our extraterrestrial neighbors. We can talk about our CSETI sightings here and elsewhere that I've experienced personally. So I've seen some of these craft. I don't think there were anything conventional with Stephen Greer and others. We saw one in Wyoming. Let me just tell this story really quickly.
Not near Devil's Tower in Wyoming.
No. That's in South Dakota, actually. But no, that's the next state over. But you're kind of in the right part of the country. You know, we were at this UFO conference, and this whole subject opened me up to that topic much more seriously, which now I've talked to lots of people from military, so forth. It's a disclosure project, really fascinating subject. We were at a UFO conference, Laramie, Wyoming. Stephen Greer was there, so let's do a sky watch. 80 of us. Now I'm thinking, come on, 80 people. We're going to go out and see a UFO. We're going to do this meditation to remotely vector in a craft or something. So I'm a little bit skeptical, like I was with some of these other things. We do the meditation. We go out later that night. There's a thunderstorm. We're about an hour north of Laramie, and it's pretty, deserted out there. But there was this ranch where they had a lot of sightings. Okay, this blue light comes over us. It doesn't seem very high up. It's moving like Cessna speed, or a little slower. I mean, I would say, like, if I had to guess, a mile up, okay? And then it's sort of bluish. And then there's no sound, and just going kind of north. And then all of a sudden this bright blue beam comes down of it. I mean, you could have read a book under it. It's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Something coming down from it. And it's this brilliant blue color. I've never seen a blue color like that in the sky since or before. And then just as soon as it turns on, I mean, Stephen Greer yells out, and they're doing a group scan, just remain calm. And the beam turns off, and then the whole thing just goes up and out and gone. Just like that. I mean, this is not a conventional craft. And it was weird. It left me with a really weird feeling. And so that's the type of experiences these whole things open you up to, because you've done remote viewing, the crop circle. So this leads us in a direction of opening to new possibilities. And I think if we're going to make this transition past 2012, we need to be open to new possibilities, that there's just other ways of doing business in the universe and the world that don't involve the same old mechanistic types of linear thinking, hierarchical systems that really seem, if you look at the news recently, none of them seem to be doing particularly well, either in my country or in yours right now. And we need other ways of using resources and energy in more effective, natural ways of doing so. So I think all these types of topics open us up to the possibilities of zero-point energy, free energy systems, alternate power, alternate ways of making food and communications and so forth, that just work more with the universe has unlimited energy, and it seems that as our society, we always seem like we're up against these limits, but it's not inherently limited. We're the ones creating the limits from our belief systems and our perceptions. So we're kind of at a stage of this apparent scarcity, but if you look out there, there doesn't seem to be any change of the energy from the sun in my lifetime or Matt's that would make an energy shortage. It's self-imposed. It's these structures we've created that don't work very well to begin with, and then we become dependent on them. So this whole thing has a meaning for me to open up and try out new things, new types of math, new types of shapes, new types of resonance, to create a whole new type of technology. Where that leads me exactly, well, I mean, it can just change from moment to moment. But this is certainly one big key and component to transitioning to a new type of paradigm, which is a little more egalitarian and a little less, you know, the way we live is almost pushing things around, you know, trying to force everything to fit. And, you know, you can just push so far, eventually you can't do it anymore, and you end up like one of these empires that doesn't exist anymore. You know, we don't need to go that direction. We can choose to advance. But if we don't advance, nature might just say we're not fit to be here anymore. So basically, we have a choice. We either change and work more closely with the way nature works, or we go extinct. You know, we run out of resources, and this is the height of civilization, and it's just going backwards from here. I don't think that has to happen. You know, but it could if we don't, you know, decide to adapt. So I think the message here is don't be a square, be a circle.
Yeah.
And that's my interpretation of it. You could have a different interpretation of it.
I just should mention as well, I mean, I don't know how you think, but I mean, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I made a little joke like do, like as if I was being a bit sarcastic and all that, but actually, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I've got to say, is probably my favourite movie of all time. I've actually said this many times, but you know, there's lots of movies out there I like, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind, every single time I watch that movie, for some strange reason, I get real tingles all up and down me. You know, it's a really exciting movie. I think there's so much going on there, and there's so much suggestion, and it's really well done, really well directed, and special effects are just stunning for that time that they were created as well.
Well, can I just say one more point about that?
Sure,
I know you other things want to, kind of want to just talk too much about this, but here's the main point. You don't need ET to make your crop circle for it to do something for you. That's the whole point. I don't think the ETs are going to come down and rescue you. I think the people that want these all to be made by ET are in a semi-childish state where they expect ET drop this nice toy on your lawn and they're also going to come and save you. They won't do this for us. We have to do it ourselves. But one of the benefits of making the changes that we need to make in growing, expanding our perception is ultimately to meet our extraterrestrial neighbors. But, you know, we kind of have to be up to their level, not that they're better than us, but they might be operating, you know, kind of Matt was suggesting earlier, different frequencies that we don't even perceive yet. So it's not like they can even meet us yet. You know, they might be like a fan blade moving so fast you don't even see the blades anymore. It might not even be destructive for you to meet them, you know, if they're operating at this higher energy frequency. So we need to amp up our own frequency. We need to have societies that encourage people to really be themselves, do what they're really good at doing, and reward them for being good at what they're doing without, you know, fitting us all into these little boxes. So that we can evolve individually, you know, where each of us is so unique. We all have these unique abilities. You can see with these circles, they all have kind of this unique feeling to them because the artists are different people. And if we express that uniqueness, we tap into that energy that's all around us. It's, you know, we're the ones that are blocking it. So that's really the big thing, is, you know, if we can grow that way, we'll get to a state. And yeah, I mean, I do think that ETs are real, and I do think we see these UFOs. Matt helped me work with a video once I recorded at West Overton, and I was just thinking about crop circle shapes. This is before, you know, we ever experimented with making designs. And this little light appeared and floated below a cloud before 2 helicopters came and appeared and apparently chased it away or something. I mean, Matt helped stabilize the video. But I do think these craft and these beings are there. I don't think we can actually interface with them until we're a little more evolved, not in a judgmental way, but I think we have to move up to speed with our own consciousness to actually even interact with them. I don't think we can interact with them like remote viewing can help you pay attention to your subtle senses and your intuitions more. The people that I've talked to, some of the disclosure witnesses say that the extraterrestrials they've encountered or facilities that they've been in where they've seen these extraterrestrials, and yes, I've talked to some that said they've seen actual extraterrestrials in facilities. They called them detention facilities. they communicate telepathically. So we need to kind of get in contact with our own resources before we can kind of interact with them, on a broader range. I don't think they can do it for us. I don't think they can. It's not like they're Santa Claus and they're going to come down. I mean, they're not going to rescue us. We have to we have to go to their level. You do that with exploring your intuition, shapes, crop circles. All these things to me are components of a process that accelerates our evolution so that we can come up to the level of the rest of the universe. You have to look at the way we behave sometimes and look and say, this is kind of childish on a global level. The way all of us behave, our politicians, our corporations, it seems pretty silly sometimes and downright destructive and homicidal at the other extreme. We can do better than that. And by getting in touch with some of these natural processes, tapping into this kind of language of shape and energy and so forth, I think that'll accelerate the evolution, and the outcome of that, one of the outcomes will be joining a larger intergalactic community. I mean, I think that's where it's going. It's not just speculation on my part. I've talked to a lot of people over the years from the remote viewing community, and the disclosure witnesses, hundreds of them now from the effort in the U.S. to kind of get the government to show a little more what it knows, disclose, and there are a lot of consistent themes there. It's a real thing. It's just, I don't think it's going to come to us. I think we have to go to it. That's a big aspect of this. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but that's a big answer. That's the one way to look at an answer to that question of where we're going with this.
Well, yes, new technologies and, sort of not restricting people trying to develop these technologies or bring them out and, not black budgeting things that, are well ahead of where we're at the moment. And, it makes me wonder whether or not, there's people actively trying to sort of stop us making contact and disinform. I mean, do you have an opinion on the sort of the government cover up? Then is there more knowledge out there about these things? Well, because you say you've spoken to people who say they've seen aliens. I mean,
I've spoken to some. They've seen them. Yeah,
remote viewing. They've covered that up to a certain degree, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't think I think in the long run, none of this will be covered up. I think just the nature of the universe is to evolve. I don't think anyone has enough power. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I mean, I think elites, no matter who they are still human at the end of the day, subject to the same things that any human limitations are. I don't think they can control the whole evolution of the universe. And they can slow it down temporarily, but I mean, in the end, evolution happens. And it'll happen for us, but it doesn't, man, it's not governments that are doing this, just governments. There's corporate interests here too. And I'm told, I mean, I think everyone who's listening now can kind of handle this. It's some sort of weird hybrid, I'm told, between corporations and governments. And it's a little hard to identify exactly what it is anymore. Is it the government? Is it a defense contractor? Or is it some sort of new entity that, in a kind of frightening way, is beyond anyone's accountability? You know what I'm saying? It's beyond the accountability of the governmental systems we know, and it's private enough so they can keep secrets because it's a private corporation. And they're the ones that seem to have this sort of contact on our reverse engineering the technologies. We're not that far here from Boscombe down, which I'm told is one of the places where this happens. So it seems that's the real concern for us. Has it kind of morphed into something that's beyond democratic accountability? In our country, in the U.S., that would be extra constitutional, it would be illegal. So have we gone into something that's actually illegal? The secrecy and the cover-up. There's a lot of different opinions about this, but if this is really true, somebody, it should be opened up to the public for discussion. We're the ones that really, are responsible for our government, so we need to demand accountability here, whatever these entities are.
I was going to say, sounds to me like you're talking about Illuminati.plc.
I don't want to say I didn't know what that is. I have friends who are into this thing, but that's not where I'm coming. It's just, think of your top 10 defense contractors. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, it's not necessarily at that level. It's just that it's been kept secret too long, and where you get that type of secrecy, you get a lot of other things happening. I mean, look at all these budget crises right now and so forth. That all starts with lack of accountability. In my view, in the U.S., you've heard about this, the budget deficits and the problem coming to the debt ceiling, all that. That all starts, in my view, with UFO secrecy after World War II, right?
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about. You have these
funding both sides.
Yeah, you have these secret organizations because of this the threat of the Soviets at the time and so forth, and during World War II. But unfortunately, after World War II, these institutions that were normally before were separate things, they came together temporarily under presidential orders because of, emergency decrees and so forth, but they never come apart after World War II, and they just keep growing. That secrecy is corrosive. It doesn't really help in the long run, and I think you can see that secret societies in the end haven't lasted that long. So it'll fall from its own weight, or we'll reform it and open things up, and everyone will benefit from that. I mean, why have secrecy in the first place? I mean, it's an infinite universe. I mean, we're going to go back to Giordano Bruno, where we burn people at the stake, who say, oh my God, there's more than what we can see. There aren't these limitations, but it's not just them. I don't think you should say it's them doing it to us. I think a lot of us have been too complacent and haven't questioned enough, and it's up to us to do it.
Or even like Whitley Strieber says, maybe the aliens are us in an astral form abducting ourselves.
Yes, it's
possibilities like that. Even
at a deeper level, it's us doing it to ourselves in that way.
Yeah. What do you think then? I'm just interested from the remote viewing point of view. We got sort of 10 minutes till 11 o'clock, and I've heard this concept whereby people have said remote viewers are sometimes blocked from being able to see certain things, that there are forces or powers or maybe the aliens or something out there can kind of stop you getting into Area 51, that you can kind of be blocked from certain places, and things you're not supposed to know, things that are just a little bit too hot and sensitive. I mean, is that, as a remote viewer, does that crop up at all? Do you ever encounter that?
Sort of. You can make sites confusing so that the viewer gets in there and is a little confused.
How does one confuse then? How?
Well, I'm told intelligence agencies are often located near amusement parks just for that reason. Because if the viewers go in there and they see all the rides and the loud signal drowns out the softer ones. Of course, a really trained viewer can kind of navigate through that. In the early days when we were viewing different extraterrestrial civilizations, keeping in mind all this is not something I can verify. We can't actually know that we were correct. But some of the targets seemed to be harder to view. Sometimes you even felt like you were getting viewed back down the timeline. And but I think ultimately anything that exists creates energy. If it creates energy, Matt, you were describing quantum entanglement before. Yeah. There's entanglement and you can detect it. Now here's the thing, you may not know how to interpret what you're sensing, but that's different than getting blocked. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's my interpretation of it. It's more that as you go into the future, and remote viewers don't even really believe the future exists. It's all parallel realities. I think science is increasingly coming to this conclusion that it's one interpretation of quantum mechanics is the many universes interpretation. Everything exists right now, the past, the future, and the present. It's all side by side, but you can't perceive those other realities directly. We're just perceiving this one, which we call the present. You kind of navigate through these like through film strips so quickly, so many times a second you don't even see it happening. And sometimes you perceive things in the future. We give people exercises like this sometimes to contact their future selves, to almost get advice, to navigate their way into the future, to almost get a sense of where they can be going. And sometimes you can't interpret it because, well, imagine talking to yourself from 10 years ago. You might know things or have, a point of view now that might be hard to talk to yourself 10 or 20 years. You might not understand it. In the same way, some of these future things I think are just, it's not that you can't perceive them. I know people say that. I just don't think that's what's going on. I just think there might be a shift after 2012 or whenever in the future that makes that a little hard to understand from where we are now. And so it's more of a question of interpretation than a blockage.
And you must have seen movies like, what's the one, Steven Spielberg, where they've got those twins that see crimes pre-crime. What's it called?
Yeah, Minority Report.
Minority Report, yeah. I mean, that seems like remote viewing on some level kind of gone mad. Can you see a future like that where people are sort of trained to a very high degree to be able to do this type of stuff?
I have heard examples of like that. You can look at Jim Schnabel's book, Remote Viewers. There are people who have written about this. We're told that they could kind of get a sense of what was going to happen in a couple of days, and if they were confused when it was, they'd have the viewer go locate a newspaper and say, what date is it? So I've heard stories of that, but keep in mind, there's something important you need to remember. Anything that you can imagine is happening somewhere in some parallel reality. There isn't one future. It's constantly branching out, perhaps billions of times a second from this present moment in ways beyond our conscious mind can understand. And so anything that you can view, it's happening somewhere. The real question you have to ask yourself is, does it matter to you? Does it have enough closeness, that alternate reality, does it have enough closeness and relevance to you? I mean, we can view a future where we're all purple and dancing upside down to some amazing new type of music, and that's happening somewhere in some reality. But does it have anything to do with us right now, even though our background right now is purple? So this is the thing. So with all these predictions, just keep in mind that you're the one that's actually navigating all this. So I'm not trying to dodge your question, Matt.
Yeah.
But it's more like we're affecting it a lot more than we understand, right?
No, it's gone
Just
terrible.
by have you heard predictions that seemed really weird and never happened? Like, remember we heard that when the Hale-Bopp comet came by, it was going to release these alien spores, or all, bad things were going to happen.
Yeah.
That probably happened in some parallel reality that has like a 0.5% chance of happening or less. And it really, I mean, there's only so much hours you have in a day. Do you want to spend your time viewing all of those, or would you rather kind of direct it in a more productive, positive way for yourself? And it's really your choice. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna here and just say, everything's just perfect all the way, but you have a choice. That's what I'm saying. You have a choice. And so when you view things, you can view lots of things. I've participated in these things. You can also become obsessed with these things and pursue trivia. Do you know what I'm saying? And then have weird ideas that really don't relate to what we're doing here. They may relate to something that's happening, but not to the people you and I know right here. So I kind of like staying fixed on the ones that have the most relevancy to us, and stay less on the ones that are, less tangentially related to us. But I think you can view all these things. The question is, what do you want to view?
Right.
There's not one future. It doesn't mean that there won't be challenges ahead, but it means you can see the possibilities, but it's your choice which ones you actually manifest. Okay,
I mean, simply, this is me with my skeptic head on here, and don't take offense to this,
No,
but
sure,
it's kind of like, it could be used as a bit of a get-out clause, isn't it, for some people? You kind of go, come on, pin it down for me. I want to know, if it's aliens, where they come from. Let's come on, let's find out the information. It's like with channels. I don't know if you've met any channels. You must have met channels who have said to you, oh, the circle over there last night, that was made by aliens, and I know they came from the Pleiades, and they told me that they were going to do it. And you say, well, that's weird because I made it. And you know that because you've actually made legal formations where people probably have they told you things like that? Like we know that you couldn't have done that because,
I have heard of
we saw UFOs and we channeled and we did this sort of stuff. How does that make you feel? Because it makes me feel a bit weird when somebody tells me that I'm wrong. They channeled extraterrestrials that said they made it. It was those guys made it, not us.
Well, it depends which channels you're attracting. This idea that I had originally for the idea that crop circles act like liquid crystals.
Yes.
And I've got one on the screen here for a second
sure.
if you just want to see an example. We all know what crystals look like and so forth. This is not totally new. This wasn't my idea. Actually, Ron and I were treated to a channeling session. It's on my blog, New Crystal Mind, if you search for Mother Earth.
Yeah, sure.
It's free. You can just play it. We were treated to an hour channeling session by Pepper Lewis, who channels an entity called Mother Earth, the Mother of the Earth.
Right.
Now, the first questions we put to her, Matt, were, what's the difference between the hoaxed ones? I didn't say this is Ron's question. I mean, he wanted to know the hoaxed ones and the so-called real ones. She said, they're all real. Why do you assume one's more real than the other? Anything that appears here is real. The man-made ones may come from a slightly different source than the off-planet ones, but they're as real as anything else, and it's an important part of the process. And the whole conversation progressed from there. She basically told us that they were man-made now, and that there were some other types, but they were all equally real, and that we should treat them all in a real way. So it depends which channel you listen to. There are others that would say that, I've heard the other point of view that you're expressing. So I think you need to choose your channels carefully, too. I mean, just because they said it doesn't mean it's true. And again, that's what we're talking about here, Matt, is people need to be a little more discerning, There are a lot of different intelligences around, and you don't have to believe them, even if they're a channel. At the same channeling session that we heard Mother Earth, there was Zosh, channeled by Robert Shapiro. I asked him the same question. Mm-hmm. He's a well-known channel in the U.S., and this entity Zosh is like some universal timekeeper or something. So I asked Zosh, what about the man-made circles? How come they affect our cameras and batteries and so forth? And Zosh said, those man-made ones, just don't go messing with a farmer's field. There's nothing real about those, blah, blah, blah. So this is opposite of what we just heard a couple hours before. Then what he says at the very end of the session is, by the way, if anything I said to you doesn't jibe with your belief system, just forget I ever said it. So, these channels play with you too. And they are not, they are not just privy to some special information. I mean, you're ultimately, at the end of the day, that channel is you. It's an aspect of yourself. You wouldn't be able to hear them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And let's take a look at this one for a second.
Okay.
Now, this is one that you've heard of the channel Bashar. He channeled at the Crop Circle Conference in '96. And this is a channel I listen to quite often, very interesting ideas. And some of our other researchers have listened to this channel and have come to conclusions that, different conclusions than me, even though we've heard the same. Now, this is in 2001 or so. I forget the year. This is at way before. This one was made by Peter Sorensen for a Japanese TV camera crew.
Yeah.
Someone asked Bashar, can you tell us about the crop circles? Of all the ones that Bashar could have talked about, he says, there was one done this year at Wabi Farm. It's a representation of the Sirian star system.
Right.
I doubt that Peter knew when he did this that this is what it was. But Bashar went on for a while about the Sirians, the Sirian star system. He went on to talk about the specific circles here and how it related to the Sirian star system. So of all the ones that he could have talked about, he did one that was a TV demonstration.
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Again, so I think that even if it comes from a channeled source, you need to decide what that means for you, and it just doesn't. Anyway, they haven't all said, the ones I've heard, Matt. To be long-winded about this, I haven't heard them all say that they're made by ETs.
Right.
Some of them say they're man-made and that they are, you guys are part of the process too.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
I wish I'd heard. Yeah, I hear more. I wish I'd heard
it's
more
on my
of
blog.
that. Actually,
listen to Mother Earth on New Crystal Mind. Just go there and it just streams right off. You can click on it. Listen.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We've got somebody in channel says, this is Rob. He says, I think I just watched Dr. Hein on Boardwalk Empire, played by Steve Buscemi, or Steve Buscemi, or whatever, Steve Buscemi, I think it is. And to that end, I typed it in just to have a look on IMDb, and
it's my cousin.
No.
No, it's not.
No, surely not. It's like
I am confused with lots of actors.
So that's Steve
Seinfeld,
Buscemi.
Jeff Goldblum.
Right. I could think maybe Jeff Goldblum in a weird way. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he played that scientist, right, in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
He's the one who talked about the fractals and the chaos theory and all that.
Yeah, and how life always finds a way.
Yeah, I love that quote. Life always finds a way?
Nature always finds a way.
Something like that. Yeah. It's a good one, right?
And of course, he was Martin Brundle in the Fly as well.
Right, remember that. Yeah.
Brundle Fly. And they also played a great role in one of my favourite movies. It's not my favourite movie of all time, but it's a goodie, called The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Is that right?
Yes. Very good movie.
I'm going to have to look that one up.
It's a classic, cheesy 80s movie which just hits all the right notes. It's great. It's just pure cheese and brilliant. So if you want a bit of a laugh, download even, those who like illegality, download The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, where you see, it's not Landau, Martin Landau, who's the guy who played like Fifth Planet from the Sun or something like that? Remember that comedy series?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, he goes, laugh whilst you can, monkey boy, about the humans. And all the aliens are called John.
There you go.
By the way, they're all called John. So it's John Smallberries, John Big Boutte, John Yaya, and they all work at like an Area 51 type base, but they're all called John. And if you've got the right type of apparatus on, you can see their true form. And they actually sort of bug-eyed monsters, and they've got the red lectroids because they're lectroids from Planet 10 by way of the eighth dimension. And you've got the red lectroids and you've got the black lectroids. And I think it's the red lectroids are good and the black lectroids are bad. So
it's easy to understand.
Yeah,
I like it. Nice, simple universe.
Basic.
Good guys, bad guys.
Yeah. So it's a brilliant movie. Watch The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
If I could just mention something.
You may just mention that, of course. Yes.
a little pitch here, and just in case you're interested, I don't need to sell these. I've sold thousands, and I don't need to sell anymore. But I mean, if you're interested in what I'm saying, you can download this like on Kindle from Amazon. It's very reasonably priced. If you want to see all these pictures and these different examples, I'm not trying to sell this, but I mean, if you're interested in some of these things from Devil's Den, and even more that I didn't go into tonight, you might just enjoy this. You can.
There's a temptation for you, even more than he went into tonight. So you can get it if you get the book. Yes, why not?
And there's another little one that people seem to like. It's called Planetary Intelligence. There's some copies of this at the Hen Shop that we just put in there, and this has a lot of the drawings of the early vintage circles from earlier years that I just thought were interesting, and I combined this with different activities to planetary intelligence. How to restore your. This is for me a theme of the crop formations is about how to relate to the planet. The planet has its own intelligence. It's something that people used to know more about than I think we know about nowadays. But it's another one if you like some of these early designs and this kind of theme of connecting to your own planetary intelligence. Anyway, you can
planetary
get that.
intelligence and
Amazon, Opening Minds.
Opening
if
Minds.
you're interested, but if you're not, that's fine too. I just thought, in case you want to follow up on some of these ideas, these are little cult classics.
And Dr. Hein has even given me some of his music in the past.
Yeah, if you're didn't
into
play any of that tonight, did we, Matt?
No, we didn't.
I am acoustic guitarist too.
Yep.
And I like to play coffee houses. I don't do any touring, but I like little gigs. Informal. We all get together, like 20 people. That's my idea of an ideal audience.
Well, you
and
should
it's on iTunes, and you can download it.
You should get together with Elcho Hasselhoff. You'll have two crop
circle.
Is he
a musician?
Yeah, he plays guitar or something, and you should like two crop circle researchers.
Yeah.
Laser physicist and remote viewer. And goodness knows what sort of music that would create. It'd be like a hybrid baby from Mars.
There you go.
There you go.
Very interesting shape.
So, well, thank you very much for your insights into the crop circles and your remote viewing information, which I'm sure people have found fascinating. And from the feedback we're getting in the channel, people definitely did find this stuff very fascinating. So
let me just show you one more while we're at it.
Okay.
I'm not trying to sell this, but you brought it up, Matt.
Yeah.
This is
okay.
I actually created a CD with
an invisible CD. Look, that when you show it on the other side, it becomes like a stealth CD and becomes invisible.
Know? And we used some of Ron's art on the. I just wrote a couple songs out here back about 10 years ago. It kind of inspired me. Some of these feeling, and I created this whole. I don't know. Well, since we talked about it, this is one of them. Opening skies. Yeah, if you like that sort of theme.
Yes.
So it's more acoustic and other stuff. Anyway, that's it.
So you can find some of this stuff on SimeonHine.com and also one of Simeon's sites, planetaryintelligence.com, and another one of Simeon's sites, openingminds.info, and another one of Simeon's sites, newcrystalmind.com.
That's the blog. That's where if you want to listen to the Mother Earth channel, it's kind of updates. We have some of the videos you saw from the camera failure. We just posted that one from a couple days ago from East Kennett. So anyway,
cool.
That's the blog. Yeah.
And if you want to check us out and find out when we're next on, CirclemakersTV.org, and also we're on Facebook under my name, and get in touch with us and let us know what you think of the show. So hope you've enjoyed this tonight, and somebody's saying, is it free?
Is what free?
I don't know, your music, your books?
Well, no, I mean, this stuff costs money to print and all this stuff, but, I think it's I think you get a lot. I think you get a lot of bang for the buck. So.
Yeah. I think she's saying that because I think she's been involved in music in the past,
a lot of it you can just go.
She's gone and put her music online.
You can go listen. I have a lot of it on there. You can just go listen to it anyway.
Yeah. So, there we go. Yeah. So, Rob is the ultimate gent, whatever that means. But there we go. Thanks, Simeon. Great to hear from you, and would love to meet up, says Sonia.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Anytime.
Okay. So we shall say goodnight for now. And anyone...
Okay, thanks, everyone. Really enjoyed it. Great questions.
Thank you very much.
Very
it's been a
job.
great show tonight.
Excellent questions.
Yeah. And Simeon did his full 3 hours. He wasn't sure he was good. He said, 2 hours show? You must be roughing out your fucking mind. No, he didn't use language like that, but I did. And of course, 3 hours, and it was just getting going. Yeah, there we go. So we shall catch you all next week on the show. In 1 hour's time, it'll be next week. Wednesday, we hope to have the show on the normal time of 8 o'clock Wednesday evening UK time. So tune in then, and we'll catch you later. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Bye. Remote view Dr. Simeon Hein and send me all the gossip. Goodbye.